Hello, welcome to another season of Inside the Birds Pregame Live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave in Philadelphia, where Philly loves a winner. I'm Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds alongside my co-host Adam Caplan. Joining us once again is our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell.
Yeah.
Former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant, look at him, the known Michigan man that he is, representing already. What's up, fellas? How you doing?
Doing awesome.
Doing great. Yeah. Glad to be back with you guys.
Yeah.
Great,
been too
great
long.
to be back. It is great to be back. It has been too long. It is now year 3 of ITB Pregame Live. Year 2 right here at Rivers Casino. Want to thank everybody at Rivers for providing us this exceptional set that we've got. We're here at Jack's Bar and Grill. Come on down and see the show. We got a lot to talk about. It is the season opener. We're going to be breaking down this season opening game between the Eagles and the Lions at Ford Field in Detroit for the next 2 hours. So we thank you for joining us. Look, this is the place to come watch the game. You got leather seats, you got gigantic screens, you got a sports book to go place your wagers, and of course you have this show here to watch. It's going to be a great time. If you're watching from home and you can't make it here, do us a favor and share the show on whatever platform you're watching it on. We really appreciate it. And for our YouTube followers, just leave a little comment in the chat box there, along with your score prediction, and of course we'll try to get with it. You guys ready?
We are ready.
Ready? Well, crack the knuckles.
That's right.
Ready
Start the
to
show.
Have you been to Ford Field, Adam?
I have. Super Bowl, though.
Yeah, that was that the Steelers Super
Correct.
Seahawks?
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
better
Steelers, Seahawks.
home, better.
Was that the
back
Rolling
home.
Stones at halftime, I believe?
I believe it was the
I
Rolling
believe it was
Stones.
the Rolling Stones at halftime.
And there
Yeah.
were some controversial calls, if you remember in that game.
I
The
do
Steelers
remember.
game, yes. In fact, in your office in NFL Films, you guys used to have a picture. Of,
Yes,
you
yes,
remember that?
I remember that.
That was Joey Porter taking all
Yes.
making a controversy in the media in order
Yeah.
to help Roethlisberger to get through the
I
pressure.
remember the
think.
Seahawks did not feel
Took a
good
little
about
page
the
out of the Freddie Mitchell playbook, right?
Yeah.
It caused a little controversy right before
Yeah.
the Super Bowl.
Oh,
Well, look, we got a halftime act of our own for this show. Jason Avant, who is a known salsa dancer and
that's right.
so make sure you catch us around 11 a.m.
Are you
gonna
going
be
to
a
play the
treat.
drums then?
Yeah.
I might play the
right
drums
there.
that
Okay.
are right next to us, of course. All right, let's talk about this game. This Eagles team is trying to start the season avoiding a big L out in Detroit. Obviously, they went out there last year, had a big blowout win. In some ways, this game is not really just about today. It's about the season, as the Eagles went through a major overhaul this season on both defense and offense. We've got fans very excited for this year. So, Jason, I wanted to start with you, because for the majority of your Eagles career, every year the expectation was to win the Super Bowl. That's the standard that Andy Reid helped set even before you got here. So what is that like when you enter a year where the expectations are always sky high? I don't know that this Eagles team faces that yet, but they certainly have bigger expectations than last year's 9-win season.
It just like raises the level of play, and we knew that we were going to be a playoff team at the minimum, and we always wanted to strive to win that Super Bowl. And if you get that mindset in your head that we're good enough to win, you're able to accomplish that, or at least get really close to accomplishing it. And I think this team is built to be a contender for the Super Bowl, especially with the roster moves that they have made this offseason. So I don't see why not have that same expectation as the Eagles team have always had. And the fans have that expectation no matter, who's at quarterback, who the coach is, because of what Coach Reid has done over those, 14 years of being here.
Right. Well, you just think about last year, they go to Atlanta and they come out with a huge win, but nobody knew what to expect. First year for Sirianni, first year Jalen Hurts being the starting quarterback. This year, I feel like there is an expectation now to go to play a team like Detroit, which is, we'll talk about improving, but sort of represent what you've done over the last 5 or 6 months and go out there and get a win. It's not like last year where I think people are like, I'm curious to see what this team is all about. Do you agree?
And I think most players, I think Jay would agree with that. Most players are aware of the talk in the offseason, right?
Yeah.
Aren't players who are aware of that? And we all know that the Eagles roster is being talked about now as one of the better ones in the league.
Right.
Not only in the NFC, but one of the better rosters in the league. So now there is an expectation that this team has to perform. And it obviously starts today. Road games, I think road games week 1 are always tough in the league, but you would know more about that than I.
And it's not just the fans, it's the when you're in a locker room, you can feel the pressure coming from the top down because everyone wants a return on the investment, right?
Yeah.
I've spent this much money on getting the offensive line the best in football, this much money spent getting the defensive line to be one of the best in football. I've got a new corner out there, safeties, everything, right?
Yep.
Got a new receiver, so many acquisitions. Now the organization is like, yo, this has to work out. And you feel that with the talk, the language that's being given. Like, hey, we're expecting you guys to go to the Super Bowl.
There is some interesting talk this week that came out of the Eagles locker room. We're going to get to it in a second. But Greg, you mentioned the roster, a roster that you said some believe is right up there with most teams in the NFC East or NFC. I know you feel very positively about this roster. Tell me why.
Well, first of all, I think you have to start at two areas that are not talked about much these days because of the emphasis on the passing game and explosive plays. But you could easily make the argument the Eagles have a top 3 offensive line in the NFL. You could make the argument that their defensive line and rotation is among the better in the league. Obviously, there needs to be quality performance from some veteran players like a Fletcher Cox. We'll see where Brandon Graham is as the season starts and moves on. But if you start with those two things normally, if you don't turn the ball over, keep you in games every week. Wouldn't you agree? If you have a
100%.
big-time O-line and a pretty big-time D-line.
Right.
And so obviously there's other areas that we're looking to improve. Kazir White has come in. He'll be a 3-down linebacker. I love the pickup of Gardner Johnson. I've seen the Saints play on tape for years. I think he's a really good football player. He'll play safety in Philly, but we'll discuss what this defense will look like. It's not a pure safety position because of a lot of things they're going to do. We'll get into that a little more, Jeff, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's a really good football player and an attitude player. He's a tempo setter. He's a swagger guy, and that never hurts on defense.
Greg, let me kind of follow up that. So you and I and Jeff taped the show, I think maybe before training camp started. Well, we went over the rosters in the NFC East, and we all agree that the Eagles have the best roster. But when you look at this roster going forward, do you see a weakness with it?
I don't know if it's a weakness as much as a question. And those are two different things.
Sure.
Because there's always questions with every team going into a season that, it could end up being a weakness or it could end up being a strength. No coach is going to tell you, and Jay knows this, that we're great in every area.
Sure.
That's never going to happen, no matter who's out there. I think obviously the signing of Kazir White, they had to address the linebacker position. They knew that. White was a safety at West Virginia. He's a 3-down player. Obviously, the Davion Taylor draft pick has not worked out, so it looks like it'll be T.J. Edwards playing in the nickel. I think that they would probably view their nickel linebackers as a question, not as necessarily a weakness, because I think Edwards has a really good feel for the game. He's just not the type of athlete you'd ultimately want out there in your nickel. And that could change. We'll see what happens with Nakobe Dean as the season wears on.
Sure.
But I think that would be a question. Look, we're going to discuss this in great detail. Obviously, fans probably are very polarizing in their view of Jalen Hurts. Is that a question? Perhaps. I mean, I don't think we go into a season with the idea that Jalen Hurts is in the discussion, with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert.
Right.
So is there a question as to what he can be snap after snap, week after week? Yes, but I wouldn't view that as a weakness.
Right.
I would say 6 teams that you can think of that have a better roster than the Eagles, maybe, and it's a question.
Right.
Tampa.
Wait, 6 NFL teams or
NFL
NFC teams?
NFL teams.
Wow, okay.
It's NFL teams. The Bengals, maybe. Tampa, maybe. Chargers, more than likely. Raiders, more than likely. Broncos and Bills. I don't think the Chiefs has a better roster than
Overall, you're talking about.
Overall roster. So, like, when you get the breaking down the NFL, there's not many teams that have a better roster than the Eagles.
Well, Adam, we talked about expectations, and of course we're talking
And the
about
Bills.
what's coming out of the locker room from the Eagles as far as the city knowing there's expectations. Well, Jason Kelce addressed that this past week, and I thought his words were very poignant. So let's hear real quick before we react to what the veteran All-Pro center had to say about expectations.
But to be honest, I don't like comfort. I think comfort is a terrible place to be if you're in this league. I think you want to talk about, I know everybody expects us to be, Super Bowl champions in Philadelphia right now. And, I think that can definitely happen, but it's not going to happen being comfortable. I can guarantee you that. It's going to happen respecting your opponent's going to happen, respecting the game and understanding that if you don't go out there and work every single day, if you don't go out there and have the mindset that there are things that we need to work on and improve on every single day, you don't get to that mindset by being comfortable. So I hope he's not comfortable. I hope he's very uncomfortable. And I think that when you're expected to do well organizationally, player-wise, team-wise, coaching-wise, all of those little things start to be like, we'll get that fixed. Whereas when the expectation is low, it's like, we got to fix everything right now. Otherwise, we're getting fired. Otherwise, people are going to be out on the streets. So I think we got enough older guys around this building. I think we got enough, whether it's executives or coaches or players, to understand that expectations are just that. They're nothing. And we got to go out there and play, and we got to go out there and, the moment you're comfortable in this league, somebody's coming for you. We got, Mr. T and Rocky 3. He's going to be hunting us every single week. And we haven't won nothing yet, so we're not even the champion. So we better work off.
Outside expectations.
All right, Adam. Jason Kelce is a guy who has been here. He knows the fan base better than anybody. He connects with the fan base as well as anybody who's ever played in this city. He's here for the Super Bowl, but Adam, his rookie year, I believe, was also the dream team year, so he's seen both ends of the spectrum. What kind of message do you think he was trying to put out there?
Ignore the noise. You can't worry about what's said outside the locker room. Jason could attest to that. It just doesn't matter. But if it seeps in, they got a problem, and they cannot let it seep in. And this is kind of the gist of what Kelce's saying, that their expectations are fine, but they have to go 1 week at a time. And that's going to be a challenge for the staff. This is the second year of this coaching staff. Mm-hmm. Last year, they obviously exceeded expectations. No one picked them realistically to make the playoffs, and I'm sure the playoff game didn't go well, but with that roster last year, if you look at that roster last year compared to this year, look at every level they're better. They were super aggressive, the GM, Howie Roseman, was on both sides of the floor. It wasn't just defense. A.J. Brown trade, extending contracts, getting better depth on the offensive line.
Without giving up draft choice.
Yeah.
They still have 2 first-rounders.
They do next year. Right, they do. They have the Saints first-round pick. So if you look at both sides of the football, there should be hype on this team. I understand that. But they can't talk about it internally, because I remember talking to a player coming out of the 18 season, and this player said these players were so entitled because they won the Super Bowl, and they started believing that they were better than they were.
Right.
Look, the 17 season was magnificent. I remember, I've talked about this before, it's been a while, a couple of years, but I texted with someone in the front office, and we were just saying, okay, the guy said, how do you think we're going to do? I said 9-7. The guy said he'd take that. They didn't know. They had no idea how good they were going to be. So you just never know, but on paper, if you just look at the roster, it's very good comparatively. Jason, you just gave the list. Well, you and I don't agree on the Raiders. This roster's better than the Raiders.
Okay.
But I agree with everything else.
Yeah.
Those rosters are very good.
I said potential.
Right, potential. But if we could, I think we would all agree this is a top 10 roster on paper.
Without question.
Yeah.
And if you look at their schedule, it's a very favorable schedule looking at the way the opponents look. So it's all there for them, but they cannot let this seep in, Jeff.
No, they can't. And speaking of favorable, it's a favorable start right off the bat as we get into the injury report, because the Eagles, and they can sit there and pat themselves on the back, all the criticism they took for their light practices or their different regimen. Well, the Eagles come into today's game with not one single person listed on the injury report. There were a few guys nursing something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hopefully they traveled and made it to Detroit in time.
No designations, right?
No designations, right.
Right.
The Lions a little bit differently. So we'll get into the Eagles first. And good news, really. Miles Sanders was able to practice this past week. He had been out for a while with a hamstring. Javon Hargrave, who'd been out even longer with a turf toe or a toe injury. Derek Barnett had a ribs thing going on, and Josiah Scott, his hamstring. All those guys are not on the injury report and should be available to play today. I can't remember a season opener. Even the Chip Kelly years, I don't remember we going into a season opener where every single player was available to play.
It's impressive. Look, they do a good job of rehabbing. Because 3 years ago, they really took a hard look at why do they keep having injuries, particularly in the offensive line. But they're in really good shape here. If Sanders took all his reps, he's ready to go today. Now the question is, as we talked about on our last show, does he get his normal workload? The coaches will decide that. It's all about conditioning. That's nothing to do. It's less about the hamstring. It's more about being out a month. Hargrave, that one, look, he was out more than a month.
Right.
So, you and I were in Miami 2 weeks ago, and we saw him in a jersey not doing anything, just watching practice. But he's going to play today. Barnett will play, and Josiah Scott, he may not even be needed because, quite frankly, if you look at it, Josh Job's available. Remember, he had the elbow contraption on his right elbow. He's ready to go. So this is good news. So the good thing from game planning, coaches can, at their disposal, they have every player available, so you don't have to hold back.
That's right. Now, the Lions, a little bit of a different story. They're not very banged up, but they have a very key injury. That was our good old friend, right guard Hala Puluti Vaitai, who is out for at least a few weeks. He's on IR with a back injury. He's supposed to be one of the big parts of this revamped offensive line that's supposed to be good for the Lions. His backup, Tommy Kramer, also hurt. So there might be a little line dancing going on there. We'll have to see. They've talked about potentially moving Penei Sewell, their first-round pick, who played right tackle. They've talked about maybe moving him inside to right guard and playing their backup right tackle.
Well, it's funny you say that because I remember studying Sewell when he came out and talking to coaches around the league, and there were many who thought that he would be best suited to play guard.
Because of his short arms?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
And Greg, his pass protection last year?
No, I went through a lot of the Lions offense this summer, particularly Jared Goff, so I saw probably 350 Jared Goff dropbacks this summer. Sewell did not have a good year in pass protection. And, you know, I think it's playing on the right side because he struggled, and I don't fancy myself as an offensive line guru by any means, but, you know, I've done this for a long time, and I have good friends in the league who are O-line coaches, so I've tried to learn a lot over the years. You could see that his kick slide with his right foot, which is what you need when you're playing right tackle, was just not as efficient as it was when he was a left tackle. He just wasn't comfortable.
It's like that with some guys. That's the Lane Johnson thing. Lane Johnson doesn't play as well on the left side as he does on the right side, right? Because remember, they wanted him to be the left tackle originally.
He was drafted to be.
He was drafted. He was drafted to be the left tackle, but it didn't work out that way, and he liked the right side better, and they kept him there.
Yeah. So I mean, Sewell, and you would assume he'll get better. You know, he's very young when he came in the league. A lot of people forgot about that, and he sat out the COVID year. So basically, he came in having not played in 2 years with a position change, and he was just clearly not comfortable. Jeff Schwartz, who played in the league for a long time, we talked, and he said you could see that his upper body and lower body were just not in sync. They were not working together.
Right.
Is he more of a mauler, or is he athletic? How, when you look at his game, how do you see him?
I would say, I think he can be a mauler in the run game.
Yeah.
I think he's a good athlete. I don't think he's an exceptional athlete. Like, he's not in the Joe Thomas range of athlete.
Gotcha.
And now that's exceptional.
Elite. Yeah.
That's elite.
Yeah.
But again, if you draft, he was being talked about leading up to that draft as if he was that player.
Hype was tremendous on him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're also anxiously awaiting the inactives, which will be out in about an hour, as we find out if the Lions center, who is a very good player, Frank Ragnow,
who missed a lot of time last year as well.
Yeah, if he'll be able to play. He's been dealing with a groin injury. He was able to make it to their last practice. I think they listed him as questionable, so we'll see if he can't go, Adam, what will they do?
Evan Brown had started from last year against the Eagles, would start. In fact, Brown started 12 games last season in place of Ragnow. Ragnow made it pretty clear, as long as the doctors say he can go, because he feels like he's ready to play. But, boy, last year the Eagles absolutely annihilated Jared Goff under pressure the entire game, and a lot of it's because of his offensive line. So they don't have much. They don't have anywhere to go here. Taylor Decker had the finger injury last year. He's back. Jordan Jackson's terrific at left guard. He's back. The only other guard that they have would be Logan Stenberg, who's not starting. He was out of Kentucky. So, and Matt Nelson, by the way, did start at right tackle last year when Sewell moved over to left tackle.
He had
last
issues.
Year. Yeah,
he had issues.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
And Goff is, I mean, all quarterbacks are better when they're protected, obviously. But Goff is a clear case of a quarterback that needs to feel secure and comfortable in the pocket.
Sure.
Throws a beautiful ball, but he's not really a contested pocket thrower.
Absolutely. All right, one more note is that the Lions kicker, Austin Seibert, I believe, he was limited earlier in the week with a groin. He was able to practice. He does not carry a designation, but whenever your kicker is dealing with a groin injury, always something to keep note of.
Gee, I missed studying him this week. Adam, you probably studied him in great detail.
Yeah, Austin Seibert, he's a journeyman kicker. You saw what happened to Gonzalez, the kicker for the Panthers.
Right.
Second year in a row, he gets hurt in a practice or a game, and he's done for the season. So that's something to keep an eye on. How good his kickoffs are.
There you go. I'll have to keep an eye on when the game starts.
I think I didn't know that.
A couple of Eagles moves that are worth mentioning over the past week. Obviously, Anthony Harris, who was released, then re-signed to the practice squad, was released again. So the Eagles really don't have a veteran safety at their disposal if either Gardner Johnson or Marcus Epps gets hurt. And we all know Marcus Epps will be starter for the first year this year anyway. We'll get into that. Andre Dillard, I still am perplexed by this. This guy gets hurt in practice.
It's weird.
More than most I've ever seen. Now, last year it was the torn biceps, or the year before in practice. Now he's got a broken arm, so he'll be out how long?
Concussion in practice?
And a concussion,
So he had surgery. He's out a minimum of 4 weeks as he's on an IR, but look for it to be 6 to 8 weeks with the surgery. So that's, look, and by the way, how about that? They did not elevate or sign from the practice squad LaRaven Clark. So, and thankfully, Jeff Stoutland gave him the answers to the test. Jack Driscoll's the backup left tackle right now.
So who were the backup O-linemen today?
So you're looking at Jack Driscoll as a backup tackle. Yeah, you're looking at an interior offensive line. You've got Cam Jurgens. You have Sua Opeta. You've got...
And Opeta started games.
Yeah, in fact, he improved greatly. And the shocker, Josh Sills, who made the roster, ideally he's really not a tackle, though he's 6'6". He's more of a grinder, tough guy. He's made for guard. That's the way he's built.
Right.
But Jack Driscoll, you told us 2 years ago about how they were getting him snaps at a bunch of positions, and that was really confirmed.
Well, he was a tackle in college.
Right, but again, he's 6'5", but he doesn't look 6'5".
No, it's funny how that is.
Yeah.
You know, you notice that with some guys? I mean, there's certain guys who they could be 6'1" and they look like they're 6'5".
Right.
There's other guys who are 6'5" and they look like they're 6'1". When you watch them on tape, I'm talking about.
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely.
But hey, this is why they didn't use the elevation or a move to move him up. So ideally, Mailata doesn't have any issues in today's game, but that's where they're at.
A lot to be learned by the elevations, though. Two guys in particular, two guys were elevated. Rookie free agent wide receiver / punt returner Britton Covey does get the elevation. We know the Eagles only have 4 wide receivers on their 53, so he will be elevated. He will be the 5th, and I'm pretty sure he's likely now to return punts, along with Noah Tungiai, the tight end from the practice squad. To me, that signals Grant Calcaterra they like, but just not ready to go with the rookie 6th-rounder, so they give himself a little more experience behind Dallas Goedert and Jack Stoll.
Yeah, Calcaterra, Jeff, you and I have talked about this. He's a guy who's got to get stronger physically.
Right.
Doesn't block very well. He's a tremendous athlete. You and I saw this in the Miami joint practice where I could see it right in front of me, down the seam. They don't have him, but I know Goddard could do that, but Calcaterra is really fast in a straight line.
Yeah.
I think at some point this season he could help them, but right now I don't see it.
Right. Going to probably take a few weeks because he missed all that time with the hamstring injury. And that's it. That's it for really injuries and call-ups. So let's remind everybody to come down here to Rivers, place bets, watch the game. The big screen TVs here are unbelievable. You got leather recliners, and you have an array of food and drink specials here at Jack's Bar and Grill. All right, let's get into this game. If you ask most Eagles fans, right, who's under the most pressure or who's got the most curiosity about them going into this year, you're going to get one of 2 answers. It's going to be Jalen Hurts or it's going to be Jonathan Gannon. Both guys very much under the microscope this year. So why don't we start with Hurts, who, when you look at what he did last year, guys, 3,100 passing yards, 61% of his throws, ran for almost 800 yards, 26 total touchdowns, 9 interceptions, but, got to add that but. As we know, whenever the Eagles played a team that was a playoff caliber team, whether it's the 49ers, Cowboys, Chiefs, Bucks, the Eagles fell short, offensively especially. That was not Jalen Hurts' best performance. So obviously this year, with the remade offense, with another year under his belt, people expect that when Jalen Hurts and the offense play against real true playoff caliber teams, that there should be something better. I want to start with you, Adam, because when you were doing your training camp tour, I know you spent some time with a former NFL head coach, offensive-minded head coach, and he broke down what he saw from Jalen Hurts for you, and I want you to kind of relay that to our audience.
Yeah, so in all the camps, 14 or 15 camps, including the Eagles camp, I ran into a bunch of coaches, former coordinators, former head coaches. One head coach in particular said, we were just talking over the course of like an hour and a half, and I said, hey, what do you see from this offense? What does it look like to you? He goes, well, the quarterback, this is very obvious. It's an RPO-based offense, 2 reads. If the 2 reads are taken, he's either going to run or he's going to throw the ball out of bounds. But the thing that's sort of underrated about Hurts is, Jeff, is he doesn't really turn the ball over. He's very careful with the football. He'll just throw it out of bounds, whereas Wentz, when he struggled, he did not. He would force the football, so that's a good thing. Live for the next down. But He said it's very RPO based. It's very much like last season, quite frankly.
Like the beginning of last season.
Right,
RPO.
right.
Okay.
But the other thing he added, he goes, I have to tell you, of all these camps I've been to, they might have the most talent on offense. I go, bingo, because that's what we saw when you and I were at training camp. And that's the thing here. The talent is there. Hurts doesn't have to do a ton. Just run the offense like they do it. And the other thing that the coach said is they create a lot of space for him to throw the football, which I'd not heard before, which is interesting. And I'm very curious to see if that happens this season.
Well, Craig, on this show last year at this time, you had broken down Jalen Hurts' 4 starts from the year before. And you said, I see signs, I'm paraphrasing, of leaving the pocket way too early, leaving plays on the field. When you look at last year, from week 1 to that last playoff game against the Bucs, what did you see different from the year before when you only had 4 games of tape?
Well, I think there's a lot to unpack with Jalen Hurts, and we'll get into this now. Because I think there's Jalen Hurts as an individual player, because I was taught early on by really smart people with quarterback guys in the league that you have to isolate the traits of a quarterback first and foremost, but then you have to put him in the context of an offense.
Right.
And they can be 2 different things. A quarterback can be a really good player in the context of an offense without necessarily having the highest level traits, and that's where coaching comes into play. So I think with Hurts, there was clear improvement as the year progressed. But, and I don't want to talk too much here, we'll keep going around the table, but I think you have to understand how the Eagles chose to play offense the last 7 or 8 games last year against less than quality opponents, and it was the right way to play to allow them to be successful given what they were putting out on the field. They know, the organization knows, playing that way will not likely lead to a Super Bowl championship. So now they made the move. They went and got A.J. Brown. They're going to keep coaching Hurts, because you made the point. Last year, there were a number of plays in which he looked pristine in the pocket. Dropped back, hit his back foot, delivered the ball, looked very, very good. There were a ton of half-field reads, which, by the way, that's not a negative. There's a lot of teams that do that, so I don't want people to think that means he can't think the game. There's a lot of half-field reads. I mean, I know it's preseason, but the touchdown he threw to end the only drive in which he played in the preseason was a staple concept that they run. It's simply a flood concept. It was a 3-level stretch. They ran into the boundary. If you get cover 3, it's a simple read for a quarterback. Right. You're trying to do that as a coach anyway. Sure. That's no knock on Jalen Hurts. Right. That's what you're trying. That's everybody. That's what you're trying to do. Right. But there were many examples where he perceived or felt pressure that by NFL standards was not there, and he would leave the pocket. Now, I'm not a coach, so I don't know how they coached that, because there were examples like that where he would then run for 15 yards. So I don't know if when they go to the meetings they say, great play, Jalen, or Jalen, you got to turn the ball loose, because you don't want him to feel that he can't run because he's very good at it, but on the other hand, you don't want him to leave throws that are there on the field. So I know I said a lot and there's more to say, but you should jump in here.
I've never seen so much commitment to a guy that's unproven. Right. And it says a lot about Jalen Hurts and his character and who he is. But you guys are spoofing me a little bit, because you said 26 overall touchdowns. That doesn't count for quarterbacks. He's 16-9. 16 touchdowns passing, 9 interceptions. That's his stats. And when you look at his stats, that's very underwhelming for NFL standard. Matter of fact, Jared Goff has better stats than that with a better completion percentage. He was 19-8. So, and if I tell any Philadelphia fan that Jared Goff's stats were better than Jalen Hurts, they would laugh in my face, you know. But the truth is that we see the ceiling, that Jalen Hurts has a higher ceiling. There's some improvement. There's some things that can get better. And that's what the organization is banking on, that he's going to be an improved player. Let's get as many weapons as we can around him, and hopefully he takes that step to becoming one of the top-tier quarterbacks.
One thing I would add, though, they knew out of last season, sure they want to help Hurts, but whoever the quarterback would be, they could not go forward with that receiver other than Devontae Smith. They needed a true number 1 X receiver. Yeah. Whether Sirianni calls it an X or not is not the point. I know he doesn't like calling it an X. It's an outside receiver. But they didn't have anyone to complement Smith, and they had to do that. That was going to happen no matter who the quarterback was. And plus, you had Dallas Goedert. So on what you're saying, they now have given this quarterback everything. Yeah. The question is going forward here, how much of the passing game are they going to give him? Because this organization wants to throw the football. I think we know that. 26.5 attempts per game. from week 6 on is not going to work. Greg was alluding to that. So they got to start throwing the football more.
Everybody's searching for the guy. And you see the guy change organizations. Look at what Josh Allen's done for the Bills. Look at what Burrow has done for a historically bad franchise, right? So if you get the guy, you have an opportunity. And if we're looking at it, we're saying, is Jalen Hurts going to be the guy that can catapult an organization, or are we going to do it from the atypical model, like the one that's every now and again, the Brad Johnson, the great
Joe
defense,
Flacco, Eli Manning.
or great defensive line. Eli Manning had a great defensive line that wrecked games at times. So are we going for that, or are we going for the guy?
Well, let me ask you, because with your list, and you just said you felt the Eagles, from a 53-man standpoint, are one of the best teams in the NFL. So can they get where they want to be with Jalen Hurts not being a top 5, top 10 quarterback if that 53 is healthy and intact?
It's been done before. It's just an anomaly.
Right.
So for every 10 guys that win it, the Bradys, the Rodgers, the Brees, the Mannings, and all those people, you will stick in there a Brad Johnson. You will stick in there this random, guy that have won a Super Bowl, or a guy that the only guy that we've ever
Johnson
seen.
had a great defense.
He had that's what I'm saying. He had a great defense, right? Or even if a team didn't win it all, Rex Grossman, or but if you have a historically great defense, so there has to be some positive on the other side of the ball that can help them get there as well.
And I think where it comes into play, look, when you're in normal down and distance situations, 1st and 10, 2nd and 4, those kinds of situations, that's where the offense can dictate, and that's where you can run your RPO game. That's when you can do things tactically to break down defenses, because you tend to get more predictable fronts and more predictable coverages. The key becomes 3rd down, and that's where Hurts, his running ability is a factor, no question. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening now did watch the opening Thursday night game, and they saw that on 3rd down when Josh Allen hit Gabriel Davis for 47 yards, it was pressure, whether it's called zero or not. There was no safety in the middle of the field, but Allen makes the great throw to Davis. Then he throws the touchdown to Diggs, which was also on a 3rd down, where he left the pocket to his right and made a great throw down the field. I don't know what Jalen Ramsey, where his eyes were, but that's irrelevant.
Playing the sticks, 3rd down.
Right. But the point is that's what you get to, and that's where a quarterback's ability to move is a factor.
Yes.
And you don't want to take that away from Jalen Hurts, but you also can't count on that every week.
Yes.
And a prime example of what he's saying is you can't count on it every week, because there are certain weeks where you have great guys that can defend that.
Right.
We're playing base defense. You play the Buccaneers and you got White, and you got these other guys that can run him down. Or you got a Micah Parsons that can run him down. Like when you look at those teams that he struggled against, they had a really fast player that could stop him by themselves. So when you start playing that, so you can't depend on the run game or the quarterback running on 3rd down situations.
But off that, Jason, the thing that they're hoping is having someone like A.J. Brown who contested catches, plays through contact almost as good as you did, okay?
Well, way better than I did. I appreciate that. but don't disrespect A.J. Brown.
No. But let me tell you something. They have not had anyone this physically strong in a long time. And this is where they hope that he wins on 3rd down, because as great as Devontae Smith is, he's 165 pounds maybe.
Yeah.
But they need someone who can win.
I think one thing to keep in mind is in this league, you're going to face man-to-man coverage. That's the reality of life, okay? They have 3 players who can win versus man-to-man coverage, and that's really important. They've got Goddard, they've got Smith, and they've got Brown. And
you got to see Quez Watkins at practice. He's killing them.
Right,
Man.
and
I'm mad at him.
He can run now.
I'm mad at him.
To me, that's a little unproven yet.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right,
not
you're
saying
right.
he can't.
You're right,
But I'm
you're
saying
right.
we know that these 3 guys can.
True.
Okay.
True statement.
And the one thing Brown is sensational at, I mean, I've done Nashville radio for years, so I've seen every A.J. Brown snap, plus I watched, I think, every pass target of his last 2 years in college, is he is phenomenal on those in-breaking routes, those quick in-breakers, whether you want to call them slant routes or glance routes, and those are staples of the RPO game and the quick rhythm bang play action game. And he is phenomenal making those catches and run after catch.
Right.
There's numerous examples in Tennessee where he breaks tackles, and I think he fits what they want to do with Hurts exceptionally well in that regard, because they want to get those are defined throws. Those are not read throws.
And you get the ball out of his hand quickly, and you can make big yards
Yep.
because of a guy's ability to make separation. And,
Well, let me
and
give an
break these
example of practice, right? So we're at practice, Jeff and I are in training camp, middle of August. There was a throw, Slay had coverage on Brown, it's down the right sideline. Perfect coverage. Hurts throws it into his route. I'm like, well, there's no way he's going to complete this. Brown gives him a subtle hand push. Slay's right on him. And he caught it. I'm like, they're not going to throw a flag because it was so subtle. And someone from the Titans told me he really didn't win. No matter what kind of coverage they put on him, you just don't see that.
Right.
You don't see that. It's really remarkable what this guy's able to do. If he could hold him physically, I know we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah.
They got something special here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you guys brought up the idea of running when pressured versus the idea of running when not pressured, because we've talked a lot, especially last year, about Jalen Hurts maybe bailing the pocket too early.
Which he did.
Which he did. But then someone always say, oh, nobody says it when Josh Allen runs 10 times. The point is, I don't think any of us would ever say Jalen Hurts should not run. He is, especially on third down, and they're
Well, that was
coming at
my
you.
point. Yeah, you don't
run.
want to take it away from him.
It's when you're leaving plays on the field because there's the perception of pressure where your pocket gets pinched a little bit, but you have the ability to still step up and make a play, but yet you might be running left, right, or kind of spinning around and things like that. That was the area that we speak of. We never say Jalen Hurts should not be a runner at all.
No, we want him to use his talent and his ability, but we want him to run last. And that's what Josh Allen does. Unless it's a quarterback design run, which they do a little bit too
The Bills,
much of.
actually, the Bills,
Yeah.
most of his runs, they told me last year were designed.
Yeah.
They
So,
were.
yeah,
That happens to be true.
Unless they're quarterback design
Scary.
runs, you want the quarterback to, even when he's escaping pressure, to be looking down the field, because that's when the big plays happen. So we want him to hold the ball until he can't do anything else but run.
See, at some point in this league, okay, and I know it's a balance, and I know a lot of people now just flippantly throw out that you can't play quarterback in this league unless you can run around. That's a different debate, and we can have that discussion another time. But the point is you really still can't play quarterback in this league at a high level. That's what we're talking about here, a high level. That's what the Eagles
Which is
are
what the
hoping.
Eagles want, yeah.
Right, unless you can make contested throws. You have to be able to stand in the pocket and deliver the football with bodies around you.
Right.
Okay, that's part of playing. I had a great conversation a couple of summers ago with an NFL coach, offensive coach, and that's what he spoke about. He said, you have to be able to stand there and deliver the football when there are people around you. If you can't do that, at some point you're not going to be able to play at a high level.
That's football in general.
Right.
You got to be able to execute with body presence.
Right,
We talk about that the same way with receivers. Like
Right.
that's what separates A.J. Brown is when you're talking about contested catches, that guy rises to the occasion. The same thing with quarterback. With guys around your leg, guy draping off your arm, can I make the throw? And that's what quarterbacks are about.
We're going to spend a lot of time talking about Jalen Hurts this year.
Man,
I'm
this is
really
interesting.
excited
Yeah,
about the
wow.
conversation.
No,
that
but
we're gonna have.
and we're not. It's not a matter of taking sides. Some people might listen
not
to
at
this and
all.
say, "Oh, you don't like Jalen." No, there's positives and there's things that we know, just as the staff knows. Okay.
Right.
I've had conversations with the staff, as I'm sure you have. They're working through a lot of things. They like him. He's a great kid. He wants to be coached.
We want him to succeed.
Of course.
Absolutely.
We
Of
want him
course.
to succeed.
Yeah, with all the draft
Then we do more
assets that
shows.
the Eagles have.
Yes. Well, actually, even better. All right. Before we transition to the next subject, this is what the owner wants. Jeffrey Lurie wants to know if he could be the guy. Remember now, next year's a final year of his rookie deal. This team does not let guys go in the final year of the rookie deal if they're very good.
Right.
They'll want to extend his contract, but they want him to be great, and they want to go and see it.
Absolutely. He may also want to feel a little validated too, but that's a story for another time, talking about Jeffrey Lurie. You can argue as we move on to the next
I
guy
get that.
under the microscope, more so than most, is Jonathan Gannon, and you could argue that not even Jalen Hurts, nobody else on the Eagles was a bigger beneficiary of offseason upgrades than Jonathan Gannon. I mean, the name, it's a who's who list of players here. Jordan Davis in the first round, Hassan Reddick, Kaiser White, Nakobe Dean, James Bradbury, all right, and very recently, we mentioned him, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and that's a pretty big overhaul. That's at least 5 new starters. Greg, I want you to tell me what you think Jonathan Gannon can and will do this year that he might not have been able to do last year.
Well, let's put it in some context. I think no matter what fans thought or what we might have thought having conversations, which, as smart as we might think we are, is ultimately irrelevant. Last year, he chose an approach that some might say is the right approach. He chose not to give up big plays, okay? So the result of that was that a lot of quarterbacks had high completion percentages. There were a lot of easy throws. He didn't blitz a lot. He chose to build a defense around the fact that we're not going to give up big plays and we're going to make the offense have to work down the field.
Right.
Success at times, not success at other times.
Right.
Okay?
So tell me what he's going to do this year that.
This is a big conversation, and I don't want to talk the whole time, so go ahead.
Yeah, that approach only works against guys that will give you the ball.
Right.
Right? Younger quarterbacks, guys that are improving, you don't break, right? You don't give up the big play,
right?
And they're going to make a mistake here or there.
Right.
But when you play the upper echelon guys, they're going to pick it apart. They're going to go 80+% on completion percentage,
sure,
and they're going to go up and down the field and beat you.
And that's what we
saw.
Real
quick, I got to check if Jake Fromm and Trevor Siemian are on the schedule.
and that was the calculus that he chose a year ago. Okay, and obviously it didn't sit well with Philadelphia fans. Okay. I think what you're going to see this year, and there's a lot of elements to this, and we need to kind of work around the table here. I think you're going to see the Vic Fangio model much more in play, and it's coming in play far more into the league. Just the starting point of that, there's many elements to this, I'm sure Jason knows many of them, is it sort of starts with a quarters structure, meaning 4 across. But from quarters, from that look, you can do anything. See, and also, you don't have to adjust to a change in passing strength. So if you get a lot of motions, because your safeties are quarter players, you don't have a box safety and a post safety. Right. You don't have to change the strength of your defense in reaction to motion and shifting. That's a starting point. But the other key point is that quarter structure does not stay a quarter structure after the snap of the ball. So it looks like middle open, but it's not really middle open after the snap of the ball. Right. Anyway, there's a lot more, but I want you know about this, so jump in.
Well, it basically gets down to what the Bills were doing against the Rams this past game. They're able to generate a lot of pressure with 4 rushers,
that's critical.
Which can keep Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde back in coverage and limit the passing. So I believe it's the same structure with Vic Fangio's defense. You're trying to keep the up front guys, which we saw, get home, keep more guys in the pass. So we'll see how it goes.
We're going to get to Vic Fangio in a second. I do want to highlight, before I go to you, Adam, something that Jonathan Gannon said in his press conference earlier this week that really stuck out. So let's hear from the Eagles' defensive coordinator.
For me, I think a lot of things. It would take us too long to go over, but just trusting the players a little bit more, and say, hey, this is how we're going to do things, and this is the job description. It's very clear. Here's the standard that we want to do, and from my standpoint, is being comfortable with our guys and letting them go play fast. I think letting them play a little bit more, and not to say that we didn't let them play last year, but, I told those guys, we got to problem solve and you guys got to think on your feet and get me out of trouble when a call is not ideal, and that's what I think that our defense, the guys that we have right now, has shown that through camp. And I just honestly just trust the whole room a little bit better. And part of that, you guys, is being second year in the system. They've seen a lot of the things that we talked about last year not seeing, and now they've seen some of that and they can function on the move in between the whistles, which I'm really excited about.
You heard Jonathan Gannon, second year as Eagles defensive coordinator, discuss the idea of being more comfortable with his personnel, especially if he needs to get out of a bad situation, they can bail him out, which happens in every game for even the greatest defensive coordinators. And comfort, Jason, what does that mean as far as comfort and trust in personnel? Because you're big on KYP, know your personnel, right? All right.
So trust for me may symbolize, if I'm hearing that, is that maybe he's willing to do something that's outside of his comfort zone and trust that the players are going to back him up, right? So if he's not a blitzer, if I call this blitz and I have good enough personnel, let me trust that you're going to do your assignment and I don't look like a fool and give up the big play, which I'm so definitely afraid of.
Right.
Maybe that's what the trust means, but also just being comfortable comfortable in being able to do some stuff that he hadn't been able to do. Maybe that's it. Like, we want him to blitz, we want him to play man coverage and get up in people's face, but we know Steven Nelson's going to play 8 yards off and give up a 7-yard completion for a first down. Maybe he's imploring those guys to get up and do some things that they're uncomfortable with.
So, a couple things, Jeff, on this. Last year, we would do our show. It might be Tuesday or we tape it on Wednesday, and we go. What we were hearing from other teams was the defense is so simplistic. The lack of post-snap disguise. It was ridiculous. You were basically dictating to the quarterback, okay, throw it here. You're going to get an open throw because you're not going to be challenged. So with that, they faced what I would call 7 games last year where they faced upper half echelon passers. These numbers, I've never heard anything like this in my life. 193 for 237, 81% completion rate, 17 touchdowns, 3 picks, 118 passer rating. They lost all 7 games. Garoppolo, Prescott, Mahomes, Brady, Carr, Herbert. Brady in the playoffs. They never challenged these quarterbacks. Now we fast forward to now. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, James Bradbury, who we had not mentioned yet. Marcus Epps, who they like, is now a full-time starter. Better talent and depth at linebacker. Better depth on the defensive line. Brandon Graham's back. There really are no more excuses. You have the talent now, and Greg talked about quarters coverage, playing matchup zone within that. You now can do all these things you couldn't do last year. So the hope is you can now match up against these great quarterbacks.
Now Greg mentioned accurately that some people were very disappointed with the attack style that Jonathan Gannon chose, right? And listen, Adam and I can back up that that's not just rabid fans. I mean, there were NFL personnel people we spoke to who are still concerned that even with new personnel, that there was a level of timidity he showed or tentativeness that might be a part of the DNA. That's part of the questions that has to be answered this year.
You have to be able to touch people on defense. And that's not just a man coverage. When you're in man coverage, you have to bring guys up and you give up the big play possibly. But you got to be willing to get in guys' face in order to throw off timing. And a lot of people think, oh, in zone, we can just back off. No, zone is the same way. People that are really good at playing zone, the historic zone defenses that have always been good, the Steelers for many, many years with Dick LeBeau, the Bears, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whoever you can think of, they were excellent in zone because they would touch people. They would get close enough to them in their matchups, put their hands on them when they could in that 5 yards. But what does that mean? It's a possibility that a guy can make a move and get past me, but you got to get over that fear and be willing to get up and throw off timing and touch people. And you can't do that being scared. You just can't.
But do you, and I agree with you, do you believe that a lot of that fear was fueled by how do I get Steven Nelson to get up close on a wide receiver? How do I let Anthony Harris, who does not run and turn and have fluid hips, how do I put them in those positions when I know that those are not positions for them to succeed?
Well, you don't have that anymore. Right? So you don't have that anymore. So now, if we're looking at today's game, in these first 4 games, we're going to know a whole bunch. Is this a new style, new mindset?
Well,
it's hard for me to believe that people can turn off and turn on their mindset.
Well, one of the things, one reason the Fangio model is sort of taking root throughout the league now is because from that quarters structure look, when the ball is snapped, you can go to anything, okay? And so it has built-in disguise and late movement. That's the goal, so that the quarterback does what he sees pre-snap, which is your basic quarter structure, is not what he sees post-snap. That's the goal. Okay, and you can do many, many things from that. We won't go deep into the weeds, but there's many things you can do from that. And I think that's now the goal. And also, talking about zone concepts, as you are, Jay, the idea of sort of vision zone or landmark zone is kind of out of the league now for the most part. It's more matchup zone. You don't see a lot of teams just have, let's say, underneath defenders in zone drop back just staring at the quarterback now. Okay, you have to find the routes. Okay, you have to match up. You can't just drop back and stare at the quarterback because that doesn't work anymore. That's the old, like I said, landmark zone, vision zone. That doesn't really work. So when you play zone, there's far more matchup principles now in all zone concepts.
I would love to hear a conversation between former defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz and current one Jonathan Gannon on what's the most important thing to do to rattle a quarterback. I feel like one would say hit him as much as you can. The other would say in this game you got to confuse them as much as you can. I don't know if anyone's
like
right
to
or
do
wrong.
both.
You'd love to
Ideally,
have that mix.
ideally. Well,
if you're
but these are not
confusing them,
guys
you're
who are
gonna
in
get hit.
between.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's funny. So, look, I've always said that I think that if you're saying about the Philadelphia Eagles this year that they're only going to go as far as Jalen Hurts takes them, you're ignoring the
Right.
defensive element of the equation and Jonathan Gannon and the importance of seeing what he's going to be like in his second year.
Look, there's a
as
ton
defensive
of pressure on him because, again, the front office, what more can they do? They address the depth on the defensive line. They address the linebacker core, which is poor last season. They actually have depth at that position.
Right.
They address safety. They address corner with Bradbury. There's really nothing else they could do. Now it's go out and play, and let's see if they can really impact the quarterback, which they didn't do last season.
What did you make of Vic Fangio occasionally popping up at Eagles practice as we talk about the
I
Vic
saw
Fangio
him easily
match?
a half a dozen times at Eagles
Yeah.
practices. Even on the road in Miami, he showed up. You and I were there like, what is he doing
And
here?
we're like, we keep thinking, where's the connection? Where's the former
Well, we know
coach?
that-
Well, we know the connection. The connection
Brandon
is
Staley, yeah.
because Brandon
Brandon Staley,
Fangio is Staley's mentor,
Right.
and Staley and Gannon are best friends.
Right. I sort of meant direct connection,
Yeah.
but yes, that's a one
So,
through the other kind
look,
of guy.
he's obviously very good friends. My understanding is he's not just friends with Gannon, he knows other people with the Eagles. I just found it fascinating to keep showing up, so who knows, maybe someday he'll be a consultant.
Perhaps.
Hey, listen, I wonder if
I'm sure he's talking to a lot of teams
Yeah.
because it's Vic Fangio. He's
yeah,
highly
and
respected.
by the way, he's still under contract to Denver. But look, if Gannon becomes a head coach next season, obviously if everything goes well for him, who knows next year who?
I mean, I talked to some offensive coaches this summer, and one question I would ask a lot of guys is, can you give me the 3 guys defensively who were the toughest to play against? I'm talking tactically.
Yeah,
Obviously,
sure,
they have great
sure.
players. That's a whole different deal. And it was always the Vic Fangio model was always one of the 3.
Right.
So I think that's the league's cyclical. Obviously at some point this could be great for 3-4 years and teams figure it out. I mean, that goes back in the history of the league. The Buddy Ryan defense took the league by storm, and then teams figured it out because there are always voids.
Right.
When teams figured out how to get to those voids. The Tony Dungy Tampa 2, that worked for a number of
Right down the
years,
middle.
and then teams figured it out.
Sure.
But right now, that's the approach a lot of teams are taking because of the built-in disguise and late movement. That's one of the main reasons.
The Eagles went against Fangio last year. They did well in the first half. Okay.
Right.
Anything particular you remember in that Denver
Well,
game?
I also remember they just had a great individual play as well,
Smith.
where Patrick Surtain had great coverage on Devonta Smith, and Smith made a great catch. I remember that
okay.
play specifically. You
Yes.
probably remember it as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Corner
it's
of the
just,
end zone, yeah.
it's just the
Right
Jimmys
side,
and Joes, and your guy makes a play. But I can't remember in great detail.
If
Teddy
my
They had,
Bridgewater.
memory serves
they
me
had a ton
correctly-
of injuries on defense last year.
Yeah, if memory serves me correctly, I think Jalen Hurts only completed 3 or 4 passes in the second half.
Yeah.
He was intercepted once in the second
Yeah.
half, and it was not the same as what you saw in the first
They
half.
executed well in that first half.
Yeah.
To get back to the defense,
Yeah.
they'll play a lot better. And the reason they'll play a lot better, they have better players. Better players plug holes.
Right.
And even if it's the vanilla defense that was played last year, the veteran players are going to figure out a way to spice up that defense with doing something different within. I can make the 10-yard in route look 7-8 different ways. And that's what veteran players can do. They're going to make the same defense, if they're doing it, make it look different. Because
right.
they know that you have to change.
Well, despite my best attempts to get Jonathan Gannon
Sorry.
into the equation here, we put out a poll on Twitter earlier in the week from our Inside the Birds Twitter account, @InsideBirds. Which person was under the most pressure going into the year, Jalen Hurts or Jonathan Gannon? You can only pick one. Over 70% said Jalen Hurts.
See, I'm on the opposite. think
I
it's
was
more
with you.
Gannon.
I was on the other end as well.
Why do you feel that way, though?
Well, I just think that this is still a defensive town, first and foremost, and I thought you saw more improvement out of Jalen Hurts from week 1 to week 17 than you can say that the overall defense. I thought the defense was the same from week 1. So that's not true. They were much better against the run in the second half. They made some personnel changes. I mean, they were getting gashed. But in general, whenever they played a good team, they were pretty lousy.
I mean, to put this to bed today, maybe we're going to come back to this a lot, obviously. But let's remember one thing. Defense in this league on the back end now requires quality safeties more than ever before, okay? And what did the Eagles have this year? 2 new starting safeties.
Right.
That tells you a lot. Jonathan Gannon is not going to sit down at a press conference after a game or in the middle of the week and say, hey guys, I'm doing what I'm doing on defense because my safeties aren't very good. He's not going to say that, nor should he. So we have to understand that they made changes for a reason.
Absolutely.
So, he played right or wrong, okay? We're not in the meetings, so
Right.
I'm not, but he played a certain way because clearly he felt that was the best way to play.
I totally agree.
Given his personnel. We can agree or disagree, okay? And we're not saying he's right 100% of the time. Believe me, I've been around coaches and they'll tell you, hey, I didn't do a great job today, okay? That's the way it works. You know that. Coaches have to be accountable too, just like players. But he played the way he did because he did not believe he had the talent to do much more than what he
There
did.
was certainly a method to the madness.
So I agree with the fans. The reason I agree with the fans totally is because when you look at every position on offense, you're going to say, but you may say with the exception of the running backs, offensive line top 3, receivers top 5.
You mean now? What they have now?
What they have
the group,
now,
yes.
Yeah.
tight end,
Yeah.
top 5.
Yeah.
When you start to get
Potentially, yeah.
potentially behind the guys,
Yeah.
the 4 main guys, right? 5 or 6 running backs. Only question, and
Right
quarterback.
in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
So
No.
and when you go down, you can't say that for safeties. You can't say that for linebackers. You may say it for corners. You may say it for defensive line. Defensive line, the corners, only ones. But offense has way more, talent.
But they've upgraded significantly on defense. One thing, as Greg was talking about, he coached the limitations that he had to work with. I get that. It helped them win games. But with all this talent here this year, the expectations are way higher.
Yeah. You coach your personnel now.
Yeah, which is a lot better.
And let's think of it this way too. There's 3 parts to every game. There's offense, defense, special teams. What did the Eagles' offense become last year? A grinded out offense that ate clock, controlled the pace and tempo of games.
Yes.
When you're able to do that, what's the last thing you want to do on defense? Have a long drive for 10 plays, 80 yards, take up 7 minutes, and then have the offense come out and hit a 60-yard touchdown.
Right.
So he's playing to what the team was a year ago. And I'm not defending Jonathan Gannon. I don't know Jonathan Gannon, okay? I mean, I saw what he did last year. Like I said, we can debate that forever. But he's playing to what the team became.
Right.
They controlled the pace and tempo of games.
Right.
That's how they won. And you don't want to give up big plays at all when that's the way you choose to play offense.
There you go. All right, we are going to take a split-second break to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city, and this is my place.
All right, thanks again to Rivers and putting us up here at Jack's Bar and Grill. It's a great time. There's awesome food and drink specials. There's wonderful TVs. You got Eagles fans starting to pile in, probably placing a few bets. By the way, that line, boy, did that move from 2 months ago in the summer to what it is now. We'll get into that a little bit later. Also, just want to congratulate our analyst here, Jason Avant. As you can see him in the Michigan Wolverines gear, he is now the sideline radio voice for the University of Michigan broadcast, and he was there yesterday at the game, right?
Yeah, at the game yesterday, had a great time. Michigan won. J.J. McCarthy played really well. The game was rain delayed, so we got done at 1 a.m. and I had a 6:30 flight. So,
And you made
but I
it here
made
on
it.
time. That's amazing.
Though the horror stories about flying, good for you, man.
Yeah, it was raining too. I was like, don't let it.
Great job. I'm sure all the Michigan fans are happy to hear you on the radio broadcast.
Amazing blue.
Hey, you know what's funny? I went down with all Eagles fans, so I'm talking about annoyed when it's a 6 a.m. flight to go to Michigan.
I didn't even think about that,
and
of
they're
course.
EAGLES. I'm like, dude, it's 6 o'clock in the morning.
Welcome to the life of an Eagles beat reporter. All right? You're lucky your game wasn't in San Francisco, because then you had like 6 hours of it. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about the offense as we switch gears again. There's a sign above the man's locker that says always open. We're talking about newcomer A.J. Brown. He was brought to the Eagles this offseason to become a dynamic weapon in the passing game. And they gave up a pretty penny, a first-round pick, a new contract, over $20 million a year to make sure that he's here and upgrading this offense. So, Jason, I'll start with you. You played wide receiver. You've already tried to distance yourself from any kind of comparisons between A.J. Brown. What do you see in this guy, and what's he going to bring to this offense?
Well, he's a special player with the ball in his hand. And so that's what makes him special. He has the ability to separate at the catch point, which is, and that can be a slight push. That can be anything like that. Those contested balls. And also, he's a Deebo Samuel type when he touches the ball. And that's a special thing to have. Now, there are some receivers that win with quickness. There are some receivers that kind of win with just physicality and aggression. He has a bit of both of those in his game. But if something doesn't work, say his feet doesn't work, he can always go back to power. When you're a guy that win with feet only or quickness only, you have no other move after that. So I love a big, strong guy because he has multiple ways of winning.
Right.
And that's what I see from A.J. Brown. He can win at the catch point. He can win at the line of scrimmage.
Right.
And even when he's covered, like his sign says, give him a chance. He may be always open.
He's always open. Greg, I've seen examples, individual examples of A.J. Brown winning on a 9 route, on a deep post, over the middle with run after the catch. So I know he can win at every level, but where does he consistently win, and how do you visualize that in the Eagles offense?
Well, I think he's at his best, and I think this is really important in the Eagles offense, working between the numbers and between the hashes. As Jay said, he catches through contact, and that's really important because while he's not slow or plodding by any means, he's not necessarily one of those dynamic quickness guys. So he's going to catch through contact. That's the strength of his game. And then the ability to shed defenders. And I think that works really well in the Eagles offense because they will be somewhat RPO based. And predominantly in the RPO game, what do you get? You get in-breaking routes. That's not 100% because teams are expanding RPO concepts just as we knew they would as defenses understood that everything was in the middle of the field.
Right.
But it's still predominantly in the middle of the field. So that fits really well with the foundational RPO concept that the Eagles will run. The other factor is you're still likely to get a lot of single high 8-in-the-box looks with the Eagles in normal down and distance situations because of the quality of the run game and the Hurts factor in the run game, and that creates more space in the secondary because pass coverage with zone, and well, as an offense, it's about numbers and space when you're facing zone. And if you have more space, which you will have if it's single high, then you can work in space better, and Brown's really good at that.
So you believe even without the benefit of playing alongside Derrick Henry anymore, that he will still be facing a defense that's going to be a lot more single high?
Yeah, well, you have the Hurts factor.
Of course.
I mean, you're going to have the zone read factor. You're going to have other design run factors. You know, that's what the Eagles do.
You got to commit an extra person.
Yeah, Hurts is a factor as a runner.
Right.
You know, now that doesn't mean he's going to have 15 design runs every week, but he's a factor as a runner by design.
Right.
I'll just say my number one attribute is that he's fearless.
Yep.
And that's something that you don't see from receivers a lot because a lot of receivers are not well with contact.
You can say they're divas. That's
they're
okay.
not well. I'm not saying they're not well with contact.
Right,
being
right.
around people, being in crowds, and being willing to get into a bar fight.
Right.
And that's this guy. He's kind of built for that. And you're going to succeed when you're a fearless receiver. You're willing to take a shot. He usually comes out of some plays that guys would go. I would have went down on a few of those plays. I'm telling you, I'd have caught it and got under it. But he runs
go
through
down,
it.
yeah.
He doesn't go down, and
Right.
it's a good thing, a very good thing. You know, so I love that he's fearless.
A couple things. He's like a running back with the ball in his hands.
Yep.
You see him in the open field. We saw this in training camp. And
Yeah.
the other part about this, which I find interesting, is we really have not talked about this, but the one issue that Hurts really had was throwing the ball over the middle last year. The so-called heat map, where if you see where he likes to throw,
Yes.
one side of the field, not over the middle. There are a ton of throws over the middle in training camp to Goddard and Brown on that bang play action. They did a ton of it,
Well,
so I'm looking for that today.
And those are one-read throws. See, I think the issue with Hurts was not those throws, because those are defined one-read throws. The issue is the drop-back type throws, okay, where it's maybe 3rd and 8, and you have to drop back and see it. You know, the bang play action and the RPOs are one-read throws.
And
those are easier,
Yeah.
relatively speaking.
Yeah, and it's kind of a cheat too because
Right.
usually they're in a reduced split, you know,
Right.
and it's kind of tailored for it.
But the throws over the middle was the one thing that people point out. He just wasn't doing it last year.
No.
Yeah.
You're going to see this with Goddard this year. I'm
Because
telling you.
many, not all, but many college quarterbacks, okay, when they come into the league, particularly when they come from certain systems like the Lincoln Riley system, don't forget there's way more space, guys, in college football because of the hash marks. So you don't have to make a lot of throws in the middle of the field where there are a lot of bodies. When you get to the NFL and you have to throw between the numbers and between the hashes, it can look like there's 15 defenders out there. All of a sudden, there's a lot of bodies there that you're not used to seeing from playing in the college game.
Right.
Out throwing it on the edges is the safer thing. Looking in there for a young quarterback that doesn't have a bunch of experience, looking in there is just confusion. It's like, that's an interception. This is safe. I'm going to this guy.
And if you then pause for half a beat, because don't forget in the NFL, fractions matter. So if you pause for half a beat, you're done.
Yeah.
Right. So part of the journalist and reporter in me is always to be a little bit skeptical of things. So when I see that here's a guy who was a 2-time 1,000-yard receiver, has made a Pro Bowl, probably did everything that the Titans asked of him to do, and yet when it came down to pay him or option B, the Titans chose option B. Adam, what's behind that?
So what happened was they were talking to his agent, and they had interest in extending his contract, but they were so off on the guaranteed money at signing that Titans knew they weren't going to get this done. And remember, he would have been on the last year of his rookie deal this year. Right. So they had a decision to make: let him play it out, potentially tag him, drag it along, or trade him. And they got multiple picks, including a first rounder. And their issue, as I understand it, was not so much this year or next year. It was 3 or 5 years down the line because he's had scopes in both knees. As I'm told, one knee was better than the other knee. And when you're guaranteeing money, it's not about right now, it's about what's going to happen in 3 years from now. The Eagles said, Howie Roseman was on record, he was asked at the time of the trade, they did the background on his knees, they felt good with it. Titans clearly did.
That's interesting.
There's two schools of thought, too, on receivers around the league, by the way. I'm talking about GMs and coaches. And one school of thought is that there's always going to be receivers in drafts who are really good. That's the way the game has moved, beginning at the lower levels. You know, it's now a passing game. There's always receivers. Receivers every year in the draft are, I think more receivers are taken in the draft every year than pretty much any position. And that's one school of thought. The other school of thought, of course, is that, hey, the game's a passing game now. You absolutely need big-time receivers, and if you have a chance to get one, you go get one. Maybe John Robinson and the Titans felt, hey, you know, we're not going to pay this guy whatever the number was. I don't know the numbers offhand because there's always receivers. We'll go get one in the draft. We don't have to pay him, and maybe he can do essentially the same thing.
Yeah, that's tough because you're giving up the proven commodity for the hope that somebody can do that.
Hearing Adam's thought on that made me think that should we look at Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown as a running back? Right, and now will the shelf life be less?
I think Deebo was thinking about that after the season ended.
That report makes me think that the Titans AJ Brown is taking too many hits because he is fearless.
Watch him.
He is a running back with the ball in his hand.
Moving this forward on that, I'm curious to see how much he practiced because with the Titans, he didn't practice a lot last season. They made sure he got to the game. He might take 2 years ago. He took every Wednesday off. Now this summer he was great, no issues. He looked fine. But again, it's not so much about now, it's as the season progressed. How are the condition of his knees? This is something to watch. And I can tell you, they love this player. A.J. Brown, the Titans did. Coach is very close to him, front office. It had to crush John Robinson to do this. Who drafted him, he got it right. When you get it right as a front office, to trade a kid like this, sort of the heart and soul of the football team, believe it or not as much as the quarterback. This kid is special.
And he was a second-round pick. So, I remember watching him on tape because he played his second to last year in college, he played exclusively in the slot. And his last year in college, for the first 7 games, he played exclusively in the slot. And then they moved him to the X in about the last 5 games of his last year in college. So he was predominantly a slot receiver in college.
Right.
Well, we've seen him in training camp go.
Yeah. So he can line up anywhere.
So on that point, I wanted to ask you, we'll get into the Lions a little bit now because this is a preview show, right? The Lions they're trying to make the most of what they got at cornerback. They have a kid out of Penn State, Amani Oruwariye, right?
He's big. He's a big kid. He's about 6'1",
Penn State guy, and I can't even get his name right.
Both corners, Oruwariye and Okudah, are actually tall.
Jeff Okudah, tall, physical guy.
They're
now
both
Jeff
6'1" and over.
Right. Okudah, missed most of last year. He was a top 5 pick. He didn't have a great rookie year. This is kind of a challenge for them. How do you see this matchup? If you're the Eagles offense, Are you trying to isolate one of these guys, whether Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown, on one of those two guys in particular?
Well, let's backtrack for a sec. Let's
ahead.
talk about Aaron Glenn, the D coordinator, in his second year, and what he would like to do, which he could not do a year ago because he was playing, Jeff, with guys like you and me in the secondary.
Sounds like a familiar story we've already talked about.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, they played with street free agents last year in the secondary. Aaron Glenn, prior to becoming Detroit's DC a year ago, spent 5 years with the Saints under Dennis Allen. Okay, they would like to play more man coverage. Aaron Glenn would like to be aggressive with his fronts, multiple with his fronts, and be aggressive with his man coverage. He could not do that a year ago. In an ideal world, you have two big corners. Now, Okudah was generally regarded by pretty much everybody as a high-level prospect. Okay, obviously it has not worked out yet, and he had an Achilles, and we don't know how that's going to play out. Amani Arurie is 6'1", 6'2". He has really good reps and really bad reps. But he's a big corner. He can be physical. So in an ideal world, he wants to line up and be aggressive, particularly on third down. Whether that happens today, we don't know the answer to that because, you know, that's a work in progress.
Is that advantage Eagles if these two Lions corners are trying to get up and play press man on these Eagles wide receivers?
With the type of receivers we have, you have one route technician and you got one physical guy that can run through anybody. I think that you love your matchups at receiver pretty much most of the season unless you're playing against one of the upper echelon Marshawn Lattimore's or, you know, Jalen Ramsey. That's the only time where you're thinking twice as an offensive coordinator about
Quez
certain
Watkins
routes.
is a vertical slot. They are not. Mike Hughes was a kick returner on a corner for Minnesota. He was a first-round pick. He tore his ACL. Was never the same when Kansas City. I'll take that matchup all day with Quez Watkins.
Yeah, you got Tracy Walker and Deshaun Elliott from the Ravens. Yeah, Tracy Walker is good, but I still don't think you can cover
Elliott's not really a pass defender in a strict sense. He's almost more of a box-type player.
All right, well, we'll see. I mean, that's obviously what the Eagles went
And
out
by
and
the
got
way,
wide receiver
I'm not
for.
saying they're going to play a ton of man. They may not, because this is a work in progress. He might look at the matchups today and think, you know what, let's play a little more zone. You know, we don't know the answer. Week one, there's more questions than answers.
A ton.
Absolutely.
Especially when there's new personnel.
I would attack Jeff Okudah. I would attack him because I think that his confidence is shaken in the NFL because he was so highly touted, and there's a lot of people questioning his ability. I think this is the time where you kind of cement that, and that's the type of mindset a player should have.
Where did Jeff Okudah go to college?
Oh, yeah.
I think he went to Ohio State. No bias in that comment, right?
He's actually a Texas kid, but he was a big-time five-star, like a top 5 recruit in the country.
Yeah.
Now, what happened with Okudah is they opened the competition in training camp, this coaching staff, because they want to see how he came back from the torn Achilles. He beat out Will Harris, who was a third-rounder at 19. So
who was a safety in college, by the way.
They moved him to corner, and he beat him out. So we'll see how he does today. The key here is, do the Eagles come out throwing the football?
Right.
Or are they going to be aggressive, or are they going to slow things down? I'm fascinated because no one has the answer. That's to me one of the top questions for this game.
By the way,
32nd against the run, 31st against the pass.
Pick your poison right. Yeah, I'd throw it, but that's just me.
By the way, fascinating conversation is how the Eagles even got to here with A.J. Brown, given all the wide receivers, starting off with Calvin Ridley, that they pursued in the offseason, and then some of the free agents that they struck out on who cost a lot of money, like Marcus Williams, the safety who went to the Ravens, as an example. What if they had gotten Allen Robinson and Marcus Williams? Would Hassan Reddick and A.J. Brown be here? Probably not.
It's a great question. We've wondered about that because remember, Jay Glazer reported back in March that they were close with, the trade was going to get done, but the Falcons were honest.
With
Calvin Ridley. They were honest about the gambling issue, so they backed off. The Eagles were deep in negotiations. We put this out in mid-March on Allen Robinson, but the Rams came in and offered a boatload, a little bit more than the Eagles were going to offer. And then the Eagles monitored A.J. Brown. The opportunity came up, and there you go.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation, but first we're going to take a break and hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you ever hop out there to Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. And I think you're getting a great deal right now with some of the best minds in football, Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan. I'm just Geoff Mosher, and we are deep into hour 2 here of Inside the Birds Pregame Live. We're going to talk a little bit about the way this game has fluctuated in gambling here. I know at the Bet Rivers Casino, you can come out here, make a bet. I believe the line was 4.5 today. I thought I saw it in June or July when they come out with those early lines up to double digits. So something happened where all of a sudden it's a closer game for some. I'd love to get into the strength of what's considered the strength of both teams, which is in the trenches. Obviously, the Lions are relying on their defensive line to get the job done today in a way that was not possible last year when these two teams played. They took a certain person that Jason Avant might know well, Aiden Hutchinson, 2nd overall in the draft. He's going to be one of their starting defensive ends. Along their whole line is Ali McNeil, Michael Brockers, a veteran defensive lineman, and of course Charles Harris, a pass rusher who used to be a first-round pick who sort of found a home last year.
He did.
Kind of came into his own. Do you like this defensive line, Greg?
I think it's an improved D-line. Hutchinson will help.
What do you have? What are your notes on Hutchinson coming out of Michigan?
As a matter of fact.
It's amazing how this business works.
Well, my transition, I won't read the whole thing. I said he's a strong prospect. He possesses excellent body length. Arm length may be shorter than desired, but he plays long. He consistently showed outstanding quickness off the ball and explosive short area quickness within the 2 to 3 yard metric needed to win. That's the way a lot of people look at pass rushers. It's not speed. It's a 2 to 3 yard metric. That's where you win early. And if you can't win early that way, you're not going to be a great NFL pass rusher.
Right.
Then you become a secondary pass rusher. A lot of guys get sacks, after 4 or 5 seconds, but you need to win in the 2-3 yard metric. I think Hutchinson, one thing that stood out on tape was he was a finisher. When he got there, he finished. Now, I watched the tape of their defense this preseason. He played D-end in their base. And then when they went to their sub, nickel or dime, he tended to move inside.
Interesting.
And play tackle. And I think that's actually a good move because they have Charles Harris. Charles Harris actually had a really good year. He came out the same year as Barnett. And I remember liking Harris more than Barnett watching his tape. Harris came from Missouri, and Harris had not really become a big-time pass rusher until last year when he really started to show up on tape with the Lions. So he's someone you do have to account for. But I think you'll see Hutchinson play inside on 3rd down.
And who would come off, Brockers, or would it be Ali McNeil in that regard?
Probably McNeil.
Okay.
Probably McNeil. McNeil, though, is a very interesting player on base downs. He's from North Carolina State.
Sure.
He's got really quick feet for a guy built the way he is because he's kind of stout, but he's kind of got quick feet.
Yeah. There was a little stir a couple of years ago when the Eagles picked Milton Williams, I believe, instead of Ali McNeil. We remember that well. Jason, your alma mater has produced quite a bunch of good pass rushers in the NFL, going to Rashawn Gary, the Packers, right? He's a Michigan guy. We got
actually
Kwity
playing
Paye.
well.
Yeah, Kwity Paye, I think the reports on him are that he's looking very good 2nd year with the Colts. Frank Clark, we've seen be a very good pass rusher in this league for a while. When you watch
Brandon
Aiden Hutchinson,
Graham, come on, give Brandon Graham his
how could you forget Brandon Graham? Of course, Brandon Graham.
A player the Eagles fans were not happy about it that year.
2010,
if you might recall.
They wanted Jason Pierre-Paul or
They wanted
Thomas.
Earl Thomas.
Yeah, either or.
That is correct. I remember that.
Yeah.
He's outlasted both of them.
That's right.
One of them blew his finger off.
Yeah. The other one's had a few issues in recent years.
JPP got 2 rings, though, right?
It's a family show.
JPP has 2 rings, though.
Yes.
You gotta say that.
Is it 2 or 1?
Yeah, because
BG has one.
Yeah.
BG has one.
Yeah, BG's got 1.
Good draft.
Where do you see Hutchinson when you compare him to some of these guys who Michigan has produced?
He's up there. He's one of the all-time greats in the University of Michigan. Just like what he said, he wins early.
Yeah. Right.
And he has an array of pass moves, and that's something that's uncommon for college. Usually college you go in with speed or power, but when you start getting into spin moves and you start getting in and out moves and some of the moves that you see on Hard Knocks and these other shows that defense coordinators are doing these drills.
He gets low.
So,
low man wins.
He gets really low. So I'm looking forward to see it. I'm always questioning when you pick a guy in front of Aiden Hutchinson, like what did the Jaguar?
Walker.
I would like to know what the scout said about that.
My guess is that they saw Walker as a slightly better athlete. Walker is a really powerful guy for his size and perhaps more versatility, perhaps. I think they were probably close. My guess is that people see Walker as being potentially a true superstar, whereas they see Hutchinson as being a really strong, solid piece, as opposed to being that dynamic superstar.
Well, we see with the dynamic superstars that, like, you see Von Miller wreck the game the other night?
So I think they see Walker more, and again, potential is one of those words.
Upside.
More, yes, ceiling, upside, whatever terms you want to use.
Right.
I think they see Walker more like that. Whereas many feel, right or wrong, we don't know the answer to this, that Hutchinson is kind of what he is. Yeah, can he improve in techniques and those kinds of things? That he'll just step in, be really solid. You can line him up for 10 years, but he won't be that guy.
Yeah, won't be 15, 16 sack
maybe
guy.
in a given year
but
he
not,
might be.
but 9 or 10.
Maybe in 1 year he might be, depending on how it plays out, but he won't necessarily be that
Walker
guy.
had what we call height, weight, speed. He had the ideal length. Trent Baalke, the GM of the Jaguars, is known for wanting guys who are long and explosive. So we'll have to see, but this is going to be fun today because the team that the Eagles faced last year in Detroit was so not talented. Plus, Greg, as you talked about, they took guys out. They've made some upgrades on both sides of the football, actually. The receiver corps, which was terrible to start the season. They actually have some players there. So the matchups will be a little bit more difficult for the Eagles.
So we actually have two guys who can, they're not, you wouldn't call them great receivers, but they can run. And that always changes things a little bit because DJ Chark can run and Josh Reynolds can run.
He's not only can run, these guys are huge.
Both
of them are huge. 6'5", 6'6".
I would say they're long, yes.
Right.
So, I mean, while neither one would be talked about as a top 10 NFL receiver, it just changes the calculus of your defense because they can get over the top of your defense.
And you've got Hawkinson who got them last. What do you have, 8 catches?
Yeah, Hawkins. Yes, but there were a lot of.
I know.
We'll
was garbage
give you
numbers.
TJ Hawkinson and take everything else.
Yeah,
But
he's a player
tough
though.
matchup.
He's a very good player.
All right, we had a great question from our Patreon subscriber, Gregory Jacob III, which becomes even more relevant for what Greg said, because Gregory was asking, is Hutchinson more likely to line up over Mailata or Lane Johnson? But maybe the question is, if he moves inside in the pass rush, this is now the responsibility of either Sayamalu, Landon Dickerson, and Jason Kelsey. And we'll get a taste of what he looks like as an interior pass rusher if that's where they go. All right, we'll get to that Patreon subscription. We'll have more questions from our Patreon subscribers, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. I want to reintroduce our friends Rebel Hill and Public Square. It's our production team. They're back, man. The teams of James and Zach are behind the controls, bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. Make sure you contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, anything you can dream of. This team can bring it to life.
Best.
So we are the best.
Best.
We are very thankful to James and Zach for all the work that they do, both with the podcast and this pregame show. As for Patreon, you can become a subscriber to our new Inside the Birds Patreon channel. It's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. And what you're gonna get is 2 extra shows a month. We're gonna have an extra show each month going about the state of the Eagles. We're gonna do a live stream Q&A so we can answer your questions in live format and function. We're gonna give away tickets to come see the pregame show here live. We're gonna give you prizes, signed autographed memorabilia, and now Adam and I are chatting with people using Discord through Patreon so we can have private, personalized chats throughout the week to answer all your Eagles questions, talk a little fantasy football, talk about the game, just directly to me and Adam. We answer your questions on the pregame show here. It's well worth it to get yourself an Inside the Bird subscription on Patreon, and maybe as a bonus, Jason Avant will give some salsa dancing lessons. When it's all said and
So you mean
done.
there's more Caplan, huh?
More Caplan.
Who knew?
It is bonus exclusive content, folks. So everything else is still going to be available on podcasts.
More than you
and,
wanted.
YouTube. Maybe a little bit too much Inside the Birds, but I don't think there's such thing.
No.
It's too
In
much.
fact, I've been looking at the questions on our Discord. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. So if you want to be a subscriber, again, go to patreon.com/InsideTheBirds and sign up. The community is growing very quickly, so we appreciate all the people who have hopped on board. I want to get back to talking trenches like we just were. The Eagles are very excited, I'm sure, to unveil some of their new weapons in the trenches. One of them would be a pass rusher, Hassan Reddick. The other would be their first-round pick, Jordan Davis. Two definitely different types of front-level players.
No.
By the way, very odd seeing Hassan Reddick wearing a number 7. So, I know it was 43 before that.
I don't like
no,
it.
You don't like that, do you?
I don't like it.
It's hard for those following at home trying to chart games. Like, why is that guy wearing 7?
Well, it's funny you say that because I was watching Florida and Kentucky last night, and Florida had some kid who was listed. It was 6'5", 415 pounds. He was wearing number 21. That didn't look right.
415?
That's what they said on. That's
Oh
what
my
the
gosh.
Chiron came up.
Wow.
But wearing number 21 just didn't look right.
Yeah,
it doesn't look right.
I'm looking at it last night. I was at the Michigan game. I'm trying to figure out what coverage they're in. I'm like, are they in quarters? Oh no, they're not in quarters. The defensive lineman has 26 on. Like,
I know.
Like he was like on the
Well,
edge.
in the NFL now, it's going to be crazy too.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of have to readjust because guys are wearing totally different numbers.
Well, the crazy thing for me was the Penn State game, the kickoff guy. They have a different kickoff guy than their kicker. The kickoff guy wears a number in the high 90s, and he looks like somebody who should wear a number in the high 90s, so that was pretty interesting. But let's talk about the front in general. Adam, we've talked a lot about, are they a 3-4? Are they a 4-3? Are they a 5-2? Are they a 5-1? I think the answer
Well, they're all of it.
the question is yes.
They're all
Yeah,
of it.
I mean, the answer is yes.
It looks like what we saw in training camp is what we saw last year. The 30-foot front, 2 overhangs, it makes it look like a 5-2.
Yeah.
I know someone with the Eagles said to me, you guys got to stop calling it a 5-2. The 3-4, 2 overhangs. I'm like, okay, we'll call it that. But
It's just math. It
it's
all
just
equals
2
7
guys
and
standing literally right over the defensive end.
It's a 5-man front.
Yeah.
You can call it whatever you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, exactly.
There's 5 on the ball players.
Exactly. The 2 guys are over. There's 2
So
outside
in their
linebackers.
base defense, they're going to have 5 on the ball players and 2 stack backers. That's what their base defense.
And why do they do that, Greg? Explain the advantages of playing a 5-man
A
front.
lot of teams are doing this now.
A lot.
It's become very in vogue in the league. You know, it's a really interesting question, and maybe you have a better answer. Because if you're going to play that way, it is much harder to play coverage, okay? I mean, obviously, in many ways, it's a run defense because of how you can line up with your front, but it's much harder to play coverage, especially zone, because let's say you're going to play cover 3, okay? In cover 3, your 2 on the ball outside linebackers are flat defenders, and they're on the ball. They have a lot more space to run to, and it's much more difficult to retreat than it is to play forward, okay?
Right.
Playing forward is much easier.
Sure.
Retreating can be a little panicky depending on, you know, what the play is and how you have to react. So I've been really thinking a lot about this summer about all these 5-2 fronts. A lot of teams, even in nickel, are playing 5-1 fronts with 5 pass rushers. So now, again, with zone, there's just more space. There's more space for an offense.
So
to me, it was. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to hear what you say.
To me, it was always a discouragement to run the ball.
Right.
To me, that's what the original thing is. When you look at the defense, you're like, oh, let's audible this into a pass, right? In order to get into that. But you got to remember that the NFL, we always show something that it isn't. So even though it starts there, doesn't mean that the guy doesn't cheat out in enough time in order to get to his zone and or the defense switches. Remember, the 5-2 front is just the starting point until the guy goes in motion, until something happens. So they're just presenting a look that's going to discourage the run. And I don't understand why, knowing that most teams are going to be passing anyway.
Look, I have to learn more about why teams are doing this, because I think from a pass defense standpoint, it's tough.
Sure, and I would say even more so, because this is a question that's been burning in my mind.
Yeah.
Hassan Reddick is a pass rusher. He's going to be an overhang player in this defense, but he is a pass rusher. Jonathan Gannon said he's excellent in coverage. We know that's not true. We know because coaches who've coached him have said, no, you want him rushing the passer.
Well, when he came in the league, when he played at Temple, he was an edge player.
He was an edge
a
player,
pass rusher. And then when he got in the league, they tried to make him a stack backer, and they found out that that wasn't what he did best,
Correct.
and they moved him back to being an edge rusher.
Sure. Let's just say if he was excellent in coverage and could get you 13 sacks a year, he'd have Von Miller's contract.
He'd be making 25 million.
He
Yeah.
does not have Von Miller's contract.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the scenario we're laying out, the offense comes out in a run look, and you see this Eagles in their 5-2, and Hassan Reddick is an overhang player who rushes the passer. They check out, let's say they check out of their run into a pass.
They're in trouble.
What's Hassan Reddick doing? Is he rushing the passer? or is he out dropping into coverage?
It depends
Because
on-
if you have 5 guys, that's technically kind of a blitz,
Yeah.
and there's an exposure somewhere, right?
Yeah, if an offense ever, like if they catch him, and if this is a quarter's defense, and if that's the base, if we're saying that may be like, part of the base,
Right.
that guy has to carry flats and wheels.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so what that means, if you get a speedy enough player to go to the flat and turn up, Hassan Reddick is on an island with him.
Right. So,
And
interestingly,
that doesn't work well.
Interestingly, Adam, when we were watching the Miami Dolphins practice with the Philadelphia Eagles, where are the routes that we felt the Dolphins were exposing?
In the flat.
Flats and wheels. Throwing to the running backs.
He
Throwing to
he elbows me and goes, look, they got Reddick a couple times in the flat.
Yeah.
And that's the spacing that you're talking about. So that's going to come up. And I'm interested to see today with DeAndre Swift.
Don't forget, they play that against base offense.
It's
too.
base, yeah.
Sure, I
Right, they're not
understand.
going to play that against 11
I understand.
personnel with 3 wide.
But there's a way DeAndre Swift is tremendous catching the football. This is where he's made his money.
And he has intermediate vertical abilities, not just a guy who catches checkdowns.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to get back to that point too, because I just thought of something else. Just look at the linebacker now in comparison to yesteryear. You had guys like Jeremiah Trotter, these guys that weighed 250 pounds. They couldn't run sideline to sideline, but they can take on anything. So you can have a 4th person up, and this guy can take on a guard. These guys now are 220 pounds. You have to put an extra guy in front of them so the offensive line doesn't get up to that guy, so they can roam free. So I know that's one of the reasons why teams are protecting the smaller linebackers.
By the way, is that his son playing at Clemson now?
Yes, he has a son that's playing at Clemson,
Yeah.
and a son that's playing at St. Joseph's now. That's going to be
St. Joe's Prep?
Yeah, that's going to be good too.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. All right, so we had a fascinating question along these lines from Patreon subscriber Derek Weaver. He said, and I think he wonders what we all wonder, when it's when it's 3rd down, the first 3rd and whatever, when the Lions come out and they got to pass the ball to get 1st down, what does the Eagles' front look like?
Well, then you get into whether they're going to be in a 4-2, in a nickel,
Which I think that they
or
probably
a
will.
5-1 nickel, or are they going to be in a 4-1 dime? And I don't think we know the answer to that.
We don't. Who do you think the 4 rushers would be in that situation? You have to think first 3rd down. Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, definitely.
Fletcher.
Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox.
I think you got to take. I think Jordan Davis is coming off the field.
Jordan Davis
definitely has to
Jordan
come
Davis didn't play on 3rd down in college.
Right.
So he's not going to play on 3rd down in the NFL right now.
Right. So where is Brandon Graham's role in all of that?
Well, I think that depends on how quickly he can beat Brandon Graham. Because if Brandon Graham is back being what he was, you probably want him on the field rushing the quarterback.
Right.
So my guess is at that point you'd have Reddick, you'd have Sweat, you'd have Fletcher, and you'd have Graham.
So Javon Hargrave in that situation comes off the field. It's fascinating conversation. They're all good at
I'm
what
just
they
giving
do.
you my pointless
Right.
point of view.
Right.
I don't know
I
the
think
answer to
it's
that.
fascinating.
Because Graham at his best was a really
Interior
big-time
rusher.
pass rusher.
Absolutely, especially from the inside when
Yeah,
they won the
and
Super
nickel,
Bowl.
yep.
Yeah. Great question.
And
I
by
think
the
it's
way,
fascinating.
I think of all those guys we just mentioned, with the
And Bears
possible
nurses.
exception of Reddick, could line up inside or outside.
Right.
We saw Cox last year line up at DN in a wide 9, which, by the way, I know he's much, much older, but he did a lot in college at Mississippi State. We know Graham can line up both inside and outside. To me, Josh Sweat, if he were to be an exclusive rusher kind of wide 9 player as opposed to move inside as a 5 technique in a lot of their fronts, I think Josh Sweat is a 15-sack guy. But it depends on how they choose to deploy him.
Sure.
I remember, Greg, you had said when Gannon started finally changing the defense up, because it wasn't working, they were not getting enough pass rush. In the second half of last season, didn't they go to more wide 9? I think they did.
Somewhat, but I mean,
More than
they're
they
still
were.
going to line up in their 5-man front. And like I said, that's not just the Eagles. I know Eagles fans might be mad, but everybody's doing this in the league.
Sure.
So it's not just the Eagles.
Right. I'm going to split the difference here and say, especially with Javon Hargrave missing the last few weeks with a toe injury, he's going to play. But I would say if it's 3rd and 5 or longer, first quarter, I think you're going to see Brandon Graham as an interior rusher with Fletcher Cox flanked by Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. However, real quick, if it's 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3, and you might be worried about the offense trying to spring a run there, you might see, instead of Brandon Graham, you might see Hargrave there.
Yes,
Who give you pass
I could
rush
see
and
that.
run
I could
stop.
see that. But keep in mind that as we discussed, Jordan Davis, who will, definitely get snaps, obviously. He was a first-round pick. They traded up for him. So he's going to get snaps. But in college, he did not play on third down unless it was 3rd and 3 or less.
Yes.
He only played about 22 snaps a game at Georgia. So it's not likely early in his career you're going to see him out there for 40 or 45 snaps.
Got inactives?
Yep. All right. Now remember, the Eagles have 52 players, so only have to have 6 inactives. It's Ian Book. We knew that. Reed Blankenship makes sense with Gardner Johnson active. Trey Sermon, Josh Sills. We talked about both those guys probably being inactive. This one's a minor surprise. Teron Jackson inactive today, who played a lot last year.
Well, is it really based on the conversation
No, I don't
we're
think
having?
it is.
Where is there room to
surprise.
play Teron? We didn't even mention Derek Barnett in the pass
No,
rush.
what it has is because
that's a great point.
It's because if you look at all the edge rushers they have, you can't have everybody active. So Teron Jackson, a minor surprise. And we knew that Grant Calcaterra was going to be inactive once they brought up a tight end for the practice squad. Yes.
Yeah.
So those are the 6.
By the way, another fascinating conversation that will be had when it's time, but something to watch. Last year, Jannard Avery was that overhang player.
Yes.
When he came off the field, they were a different looking defense. This year, Hassan Reddick is there. If he were to get hurt, but they want to keep the same construct of defense, you now have Patrick Johnson in year 2. Would they trust him to be the Hassan Reddick for a full game? I don't know. I think you might see another morphing of the defense.
I should know this, so I apologize.
Sure.
Did Kyron Johnson make the team?
He did make
Yes,
the team.
he did.
He was a fascinating player to watch in college.
Yep.
At Kansas, fascinating player. I'm not surprised. He
Right.
made
Based
it.
on preseason time, it looks like Patrick Johnson would be the
Yeah,
first
oh,
guy
yeah,
off.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. All right. Good stuff right there. I want to continue this defensive conversation, sort of carry it to the back end. Obviously, the Eagles gave themselves a major jolt, that one last missing piece when they brought in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at the cut-down deadline. Symbolically, Adam, I know they're not the same player, and it's not apples to apples. But we spent all offseason saying, don't worry until it's time to worry about safety, because we remember when Howie Roseman went out and got Ronald Darby fairly deep into training camp in 2017. You see the same symbolism there of there was a glaring weakness here, and they addressed it with a trade.
Yeah, look, we noted that they made the same exact offer that Marcus Peters accepted from the Ravens. It was $14 million a year. He just decided either the Eagles or the Ravens. For whatever reason, he signed with the Ravens. So they want to do something significant at safety. Now, they didn't want Chuck Clark, which we'd reported. I don't know why, but they didn't want him. By the way, starting over Kyle Hamilton.
I know, I saw that.
Which is interesting. But they want to do something significant at safety. It's just funny. They did it right before the season started. Ideally, that's not what you want. But the opportunity, and give the Eagles front office credit, they monitored through conversations. They have trade calls throughout August. Where you at with this player? Are you extending him and that and so forth? And they knew there was an impasse. So they took advantage of it. It's not the same position. This is many years ago, and the Jason Peters issues with the Bills were numerous. But the Eagles called the Bills. They were talking to them, and they saw that Peters was not going to get what he wanted. So the Eagles made the big trade, and that changed the course of the franchise.
Yep.
I'm not saying this guy's going to change the course of the franchise, but Greg, you've seen Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. What does he bring here?
He's a really good player. First of all, people need to understand his first 2 years at Florida, he played safety. He became the nickel back his last year at Florida, and obviously was used mostly in that position with the Saints. But
Nickel.
What's that?
In nickelback.
Yes. But he's an excellent blitzer. He's physical. He can cover. He's a really good player. Plus, he plays with an edge. And, I think...
He's an irritant.
Oh, he's an irritant.
Yes, without question. That's a good word.
I love that. Get away from me. Get away from me.
So and because of the way I think they want to play, Jeff, with a lot of matchup principles in their defense, as opposed to pure zone, I think he fits that concept really well. Because keep one thing in mind. If you're going to play out of a quarter structure, it's a whole different deal versus a 3-by-1 set and a 2-by-2 set. When it's a 2-by-2 set and you're playing in a quarter structure, that safety is man-to-man on the number 2 receiver inside. When he reaches a certain, it's coached differently. It could be 6 yards, 8 yards. Depends on the coaching staff and how they want to coach quarters. But there's a lot of matchup man principles, and he can match up to anybody.
Right.
He can match up to wide receivers, and he can match up to tight ends.
The question our Patreon subscriber, Tony Wright, one of our first, so we thank him for that, is because he's playing a safety position here and was more of a nickel, and there are some blends there, but how will he adjust to being a safety when it's just time to be, whether you're a deep safety or a box safety? Jason, how can he acclimate to that when he's more of a different type of hybrid?
He played some safety at the Saints, but his main position was nickel.
Right.
Now, I don't think that that's going to be a hard transition, because when you've played, safety in college for numerous years at a pretty high-level program, Florida, right, and the SEC. So I think that it'll be a seamless transition for him. Now, one of those things that Greg said, now I think that when it comes to matching up with guys, whether it's cover 4, whether it's cover 2, he's done it for so long, and guys panic in those moments. After that 10-yard mark, when you're on an island with the receiver, it's a panicky time for a lot of DBs, and they end up committing penalties. A lot of safeties, right? He's comfortable in that position.
Panicking, yeah.
And the other thing too, when you look at the Eagles overall, you got Avonte Maddox with safety history and skill set, nickel outside corner. You got a veteran in Bradbury, a super veteran in Darius Slay. You got a guy in Gardner Johnson, safety nickel. This is a lot of football experience. These guys can be interchangeable in a lot of ways. The only one with less experience is Epps.
Sure.
Who's played well every time he's been out there.
Yeah. And that's it. So these guys have a lot of experience. Do I think it'll present some challenges? Yes, but I think that nickel is a harder position to play than safety.
Okay.
That's just me.
Sure.
Greg, it sounds like that it's less important now to play traditional strong and free safety, because if you have a coverage guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and they're going to do matchup zone, does it really matter?
It depends on the concept, obviously. I mean, there are still teams that'll play a lot of cover 3, and then it's different. But cover 3 even, I remember speaking to Dennis Allen this summer when I was at their OTAs, and he said, we have 10 versions of cover 3. So teams have a lot of different things they do, but if you're playing, a quarter structure, even though it's theoretically zone, quarters is a matchup concept. So you're going to end up playing a lot of man once the routes develop.
Remember when blitzes happen and occur on defense, your position switches anyway. Though you have the title nickel defender, when there's a stunt or a blitz, your role in that particular play may be linebacker. Your role in that particular play may be safety. So these guys, especially when you're on the inside, are interchangeable guys. So him moving to safety shouldn't be a big transition for him, because he's doing these things in an everyday game situation.
Right.
And when you blitz, depending on the nature of blitzes, coverage is blitz coverage. In other words, we always think, if you blitz, it's man-to-man.
Right.
That's not necessarily true.
Right.
It's blitz coverage. So a lot of times you could, let's say, have overload pressure concepts, and guys, they run to a certain receiver. Again, not getting too deep into the weeds, but they run to number 3. If it's trips, they run to number 2. It's not pure man in that sense, but they have to match routes.
Sure. Yeah. In fact, I think the terms pattern matching or mirror and match coverage, we're going to be talking about a lot as this season goes on.
I think we are.
Defense progresses.
Yeah. Right. As a nickel blitz is, like say the nickel blitz, right? So off the edge, a nickel blitz. The safety technically that's over him is covering that guy man to man now.
Right.
So what does it matter if that's called a safety at that moment or
that was my point, because
because
things are going to change. It's funny, we said last September we're expecting to see match coverage. I don't know if we saw any of it. That was the one thing coming out of last season.
That wasn't really built into a lot of what they did, because I don't think they felt. First of all, Anthony Harris is not a man-to-man defender.
Harris and Nelson, right. Harris and Nelson were the problem.
Yeah.
No longer here.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise Steven Nelson right now is playing in what's a very strict Tampa 2 style defense, I assume.
He's in Houston.
Houston,
with
right?
Lovey.
Yeah.
It's with Lovey, yeah.
So he's always got that safety help behind him.
Yeah.
Fine. Interesting stuff. So Jay, closing this off, as someone who played the game, how easy will it be for Chauncey to come in and play a full game today? Do you expect him to be able to play all the snaps today?
Now that's a different subject.
Right? It's not about conditioning. He's been working, with a team.
In a normal NFL defensive coordinator with so many different schemes and so much movement, it would be really hard for a guy to come in and play right away. But seeing how vanilla we've been,
and not only that, who's the other alternative?
Yeah, but the other factor is Dennis Allen did a lot of stuff in New Orleans. So Gardner Johnson can handle the mental part of it.
Right.
We've seen that. It's
Right.
not as if he came from a simple defense that didn't do anything. So again,
He's coming from the opposite.
right. Every defense has its own set of things that are a little different, but it's not that Gardner Johnson has not been able to deal with a lot of volume within a defense.
Sure.
You know what's interesting? They're only going to dress 3 safeties today.
Who's the third?
Kavon Wallace.
Wallace.
That makes sense.
Wallace over Blankenship, which is interesting.
I mean, we were sort of surprised that Kavon Wallace even made the team.
Yeah, that's my point.
They have Andre Chachere, who was more of a special teams guy, but did play a little bit on defense last year on the practice squad. Thought he might be elevated as the second guy. They wind up going with Noah Togiai. So that's where you kind of hope, you knock on wood and hope you don't have too many injuries in the defensive backfield. Although Josiah Scott
Can do it.
will be able to play.
Right.
He's missed several weeks with a hamstring. So
Are
we'll
we
see.
worried about the physical safety? Because Gardner Johnson's an irritant, but he's still smaller in comparison to.
Well, he's probably 200. I mean, he's not 215, but.
Are we looking at him as the tone setter?
Well, I'm asking you. I mean, if you're the
Is it
Lions, are
Mike-
you trying to establish a run against the Eagles this week and see if you can get into their,
Well, I think the
their
Lions.
second leg?
I think the Lions want to be a physical team.
I think so.
Oh, you think?
You,
With,
you
Dan
listen
Campbell?
to the head coach. I think so. I think they'd like to eat some kneecaps this afternoon, as he's famously once
Well,
said.
you know,
I guess he would be because
Look, we'll see if I'm right or I'm wrong. But as Adam knows, for 2 years, I've loved what Marcus Epps has put on tape. Now this is his first year as a full-time starter, where he's likely to play 60+ snaps every week, assuming no injuries. But I think whatever he's been asked to do, which has been play on the back end and play in the box, is he a true post safety? Probably not, but he can do that on occasion. But I think whatever he's asked to do, he has performed well. And it would not surprise me if he becomes a really good player. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's an all-pro, but I think he's shown he's deserved this starting spot.
Right. So, parlay to a good question here from Adam Gibbs on YouTube. Wants to know who is going to guard T.J. Hawkinson, the Lions tight end, today. Now, we can answer this in 2 ways. When they're in man defense, we'll say if they're in man defense, who's going to be single covered, or who's going to get the majority
Well,
of
if it's
coverage?
11 personnel, I think it'll be Gardner Johnson.
and that's actually a favorable matchup for the Eagles.
That's a good matchup, yeah.
Why for the Eagles?
But one of the just high level, when I was there, you get the scouting reports across the league about what they think of guys. This guy was considered top 2, top 3 nickels in the league based on his body of work, his ability to be able to tackle, his ability to be able to cover,
And he plays
pick up
physically.
stuff. He was highly regarded by a lot of scouts as one of the better nickels in the league.
Eagles have 6 corners dressing today.
They do. So absence of safety, you add on.
Yeah.
And remember, some of their corners, like Avonte Maddox and Josiah Scott, have safety experience.
Plus for special teams. Now, the other thing is the Lions couldn't do this last year, but now with Chark and Josh Reynolds and Amon-Ra St. Brown is terrific, they have the ability to spread you out. So we'll see how they handle that today.
All right, we're going to start a new segment I've introduced to the show. And by the way, I'm being informed right now, we have over 1,000 people watching the show live on YouTube, which
That's
is
awesome.
a great
It's the
number
biggest
for
crowd
us.
we ever had. It's
So
awesome.
we literally thank everybody who's watching. Hope you're enjoying this. We're going to get to our rapid fire segment in a second. First, I want everybody to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you're checking them out at PHLSportsNation.com. And you can find them on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. All right, so we're going to go a little bit around the horn, a lot of different
By
subjects.
the way,
to
Frank
cover.
Ragnow is active.
Who?
Ragnow.
Oh, Frank Ragnow. Okay, I
Yeah,
think you said Frank Reich.
No, but Logan Logan Stenberg is supposed to start for Vitae.
Right.
That is another advantage for the Eagles. Just like last year when they played them, Lions had issues on their offensive line.
Everyone believes the Lions got a chance because of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I think that factored into the line going from like Eagles to 10 by 10 to today on Bet Rivers app or betrivers.com. You can get the Eagles at -5.5. So the line went down considerably.
The one thing I tell you about football, charisma never wins football games.
Is that why Andy Reid was kind of a dry guy?
Look, X's and O's.
I think Pete
now
Carroll would
charisma
disagree
gets
with
you
you.
motivated. It gets you motivated for the first half,
Jimmy's
but
and
motivation
Joe's.
starts off.
Nick Sirianni might even disagree with you on that. He's got a lot of
He
charisma.
likes to connect.
All right, rapid fire. Our Patreon subscriber, Aaron Puga, wants to know what wide receiver or tight end from either team has the most favorable matchup today?
Oh, Dallas Goedert against anyone they stick out.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking
I love
Devontae
Goddard.
Smith maybe, but what do you guys think?
I mean, I would say Goddard, but
Uh-huh.
I'm
Goddard has the most favorable matchup.
I
most
think.
favorable matchup with Tracy Walker.
Well, think about it. They only completed 11 passes last year against the Lions, and Goddard had 6 of them. So,
He is a fit. We noticed this summer, there was a lot of A.J. Brown and a lot of Dallas Goedert.
I'm going to say A.J. Brown.
Okay.
oh, okay.
Why?
The reason being, like, first game, big trade,
Yeah,
best friend, the Lions, A.J. Brown.
All right. There you go.
So I got to tell you a story. So I'm walking off. I'm at the Browns practice with the Eagles. I'm walking off the field, and one of the coaches stopped me. He goes, "Hey, 88." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "We could have covered him all day because we tried everything." And Dallas Goedert is 88, and he's going to be a problem for teams this year. If this guy could stay healthy, Jay, what do you think of Goddard?
He's always been this way. And the thing is that he doesn't get as many opportunities as you would like. And that's been the hardest. We talked about it, like when you look at Hurts' heat map and him not being able to hit the middle of the field. Where's the tight end? The middle of the field. Just needs more targets. And I think that he's one of the elite tight ends in the league.
So do I.
Now, and it's all inclusive. It's not just passing. It's not just run blocking. And that's hurt him too when he had Hurts. Hurts was the worst blocker, so he had to stay in to block. So now you bring in Noah and you bring in Steele, guys that can get the job done in blocking. You can just put him out there as a receiver, and hopefully it pans
Good point.
out.
All right, rapid fire. Adam, how many Eagles running backs get a carry today?
Sanders. Mm-hmm. Gainwell. Mm-hmm. They're actually going to give it to a third back. Boston Scott, how do you not give him the football?
I agree with
He's a
you.
good football player. I know they were primarily a 2 running back offense with the quarterback. I'm going to say 3. Why? And plus, they should be winning in the fourth quarter. Who's going to grind the carries out?
That is a great question. Greg, does Trey Sermon get a carry today?
He's
He's
inactive.
Oh, sorry, he's not. I'm sorry.
So probably not.
I'm going to
Probably
say
not.
no. No.
Yeah.
Good job.
On
All
the
right.
inactive team, he will.
How many Eagles running backs get a carry today?
I would imagine all 3 will.
All 3? Which is a deviation. They've been mostly a 2-man running game.
The player I'm really anxious to see in how they deploy him is Gainwell, because I think Gainwell is a weapon.
Yeah.
But now, I don't think he'll ever be a quote-unquote foundation back and that he gets 20 carries a game.
Right.
But I think he's a weapon as a receiver. And I'm curious to see as they think about the expansion of this pass offense, which we know they want to do, I'm curious to see how he fits into it.
Sure.
Weapons at running back are usually with quarterbacks or
Yeah.
offenses that are willing to spread the running back out a bunch.
I would agree.
Yeah,
And he can detach.
He can.
Yeah.
Will we see
So
that
that's
from
why-
this
that's why I'm
offense?
curious.
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah,
curious
yeah.
because in 2019, that year,
At Memphis,
he was incredible, right?
he was literally a wide receiver at times and ran wide receiver routes.
Right.
That's a weapon now.
Yeah.
And this staff, as we understand it, really pushed for Gainwell in that draft. I don't know exactly what their grade was, but they were very vocal on how much they wanted him. Let's see if we get started today with him.
All right, Jason, finish this sentence. The best linebacker on the Eagles is?
Kaiser White.
Kaiser
Pure
White.
linebacker, not like Reddick as a passer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said best coverage linebacker or stack linebacker.
Oh, I was assuming a traditional
Yeah,
linebacker.
traditional
I was
linebacker.
Sure.
Right.
Probably the most range.
Oh, no, you said Kaiser White. This
agree.
is rapid
I
fire. No
agree,
change.
man.
All right. I won't say
Greg?
anything else.
White, for sure.
White?
But I agree, but what did White, Greg, what did Dean bring to the table from your tape study, Nakobe Dean?
Dean actually at Georgia was used a ton as a blitzer. And I'm curious to see, how that might play out if he starts to play. Keep in mind, Dean obviously, he was very physical. He's just small, and he certainly can play sideline to sideline, but they used him quite a bit as a blitzer, an inside blitzer, and he was really, really good at it. Now, we really haven't, last year we didn't see the Eagles blitz their stacked backers much at all. So I'm curious, because it is a strength of his game, if when he gets a chance to play meaningful snaps, if they say, you know what, he's good at that, let's play to his strength.
The reason I hesitate is because I hate rooting against TJ because he just
Yeah,
I would
rises
choose
to
TJ
the
Edwards
occasion.
based on more versatile.
He rises
Yeah.
to the occasion when you underestimate him each and every time.
That's true,
and he
though.
shows up on film each and every week, and he makes a special play. And none of his metrics, none of the things that the pros, the professional analysts, talk about show up. And
you're right about that.
And he shows up every week. And
I have a hard time not saying, and no disrespect to Kaiser White, he might wind up proving me wrong, but if you ask me right now, I'd say T.J. Edwards.
Right?
And I've been someone who has said T.J. Edwards would have been replaced by now.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of eating my own words. I mean, no, we all
thought
Because
that.
you look at it, you're like, the dude can't run. He's not the, but.
Great story development.
Hey,
really, give their linebackers
credit to him.
Yeah.
Him and linebackers
Nick
coaching.
Rallis?
And Nick Rallis, inside linebackers coach.
He's a young guy.
Yeah.
It's hard to overcome. Like you talked about it earlier with Chuck Clark over, Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton can't run. It's hard to play this. Trust me, I know I didn't run well, right? It's hard to play this game when you don't run well. And for guys to figure out a way to overcome that, it's a special quality and a special, unique thing. I was able to overcome it by using a bunch of different tricks, right? So T.J. Edwards have figured out something in order to play this game.
What were those tricks?
All right.
What are these tricks?
Salsa dancing.
Yeah. I was just curious.
I told you he's a salsa dancer, folks.
When I play flag football, I want to know it's at the hand.
All right, let's get to our player of the game segment. We do it every year. It's back again. We pick our players of the game. Jason, I'll start with you. Who's going to be the player of the game today?
I kind of gave it away earlier. I'd say A.J. Brown.
Yeah,
A.J. Brown,
knew
first
wide
one.
receiver would pick a wide receiver.
You got to represent, crew love.
Sure. A.J. Brown. What kind of game? 6, 7, 8 catches, you think? 100 yards?
I think he's going to have over 100 yards today.
Okay.
I think he has over 100 yards in the touchdown. I
Greg,
don't know how many catches.
Greg, who's your player of the game?
I picked Dallas Goedert. I think that they want to throw the football, especially against this defense. And I think Goddard is a really, really difficult cover for the Lions.
Gotcha. Adam, who's the player of the game?
And basically, with Goddard, you have primarily the same secondary, and he had 6 catches and only completed 11 in that game last year.
Past performance does not guarantee future results.
But the matchup is good. The matchup is good, as Greg said. I would agree with him. So, but I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. Why? I do believe they'll come out throwing a little bit more. Last year's circumstances were different. They want to come out throwing more because this is why you bring in A.J. Brown. This is why you extend Dallas Goedert's contract. So we're going to see a lot of Hurts and Goddard today and a lot of Hurts and A.J. Brown. I can't wait to see this because this is going to be different from last year.
I'd like to think of this as a second-level thinking show. We do a lot of scheme. We break things down, I think, better than most shows or any pregame show. So when you take a quarterback as the player of the game, I feel like it's a little bit of a cop-out.
Well, he took Goddard from us.
I got mine in first.
No, it's funny because he texted us. Literally, I was going to put Goddard. He turned it in first. I'm like, all right, I got to give someone else.
Change. But it's okay to copy. It's fine.
I am looking forward to seeing what. There are a lot of storylines for what could happen today. How the Eagles come out is fascinating to me. Are they aggressive today?
Well, I'm going to go on defense. My player of the game is going to be Josh Sweat, and I sort of anticipated a little line movement. But I'm feeling pretty good about that now that the Lions are going to be on. Or did they say are they going to use their backup right tackle? You said or right guard?
No. So Decker's there, Penny Sewell's there.
Oh, so Sewell's
Logan
gonna start
Stenberg
right
will
tackle?
start at right guard, and Ragnall's playing, so they'll be okay.
All right.
But the Eagles still have an advantage. Their front plus their Hassan Reddick. They've never had anyone like this guy. I cannot wait. There's another part. Another guy I can't wait to see today.
All right, 2 sacks and a forced fumble from Josh Sweat today.
That's a lot, man. What's the
Yeah,
over-under on the sacks? They probably won.
We'll see. When that happens, you guys can all bow down.
there
with
we
me.
go.
All right, we'll get to our predictions in a second. First, we've been telling you about our awesome setup here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook in Philadelphia. Come down, watch the game, watch the show earlier. The food from Jack's Bar and Grill is available at the Bet Rivers Sportsbook every weekend whenever there's an Eagles game. There's game day specials, which includes $2 Miller Lights, $15 bottomless chips and salsa, $12 pretzel bites, and $16 easy peeled shrimp. Plus, they've got the home field advantage spin and win contest, where sports bettors who place qualifying game day bets at the Bet Rivers Sportsbook can enter the spin to win contest held during every Eagles home game. Guests receive entries by placing at least a $50 wager on professional football. Maximum number of entries per wager is 3 per transaction. 8 winners will be pulled via random drawings to spin the wheel. You got to be present, of course, to win. Prizes include free play, cash, and 2 tickets to an Eagles home game. If the Birds win, an additional 2 winners will be selected, so a day like today would be perfect. Plus, there's the new Rush Rewards membership. You enroll and you make a qualifying earn and bonus entry. Plus, you can win up to $500 through the new member Super Spin. You got the Champs Weekly Pick'em Challenge, and of course, in September, you got $88,000 River of Clubs game where guests can earn entries all month long and activate their entries starting at 6:30 on drawing days. And drawings are held on Fridays and Saturdays in September from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock p.m. 5 winners at each drawing picked from an envelope containing either cash or free play prize, plus a reveal club to win group bonus or cash progressive bonus. Great contest here, great chances to win at Rivers Sportsbook and Casino here on Delaware Ave in Philadelphia. The line is in on the BetRivers app, or if you go to betrivers.com. The Eagles are now favored by 5.5 with an over-under of 49. Jason, what's the final score today?
I think I've said 27-20 Eagles.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Nice job. 27-20 Eagles. All right, so you're saying that they are going to go under the 49. So that's a little bit under the over-under there, but the Eagles cover. Greg?
I believe I said 27-17, which would make
Correct.
me under as well.
That would make you under, but also Eagles cover. Adam?
I got a 30-20 Eagles. See, the funny week one is some things happen. You go, what? the
Very
world is-"
unpredictable.
It's a con job.
I thought Thursday we have a lot more points. Now the Bills still scored 31 with 4 turnovers.
Right.
But there's some things that you can't predict. We didn't know. We thought the Rams, okay, they might have some issues on their offensive line. We didn't see 16 quarterback hits.
Right.
Okay, we didn't see that. So some things will happen in this particular game that we weren't expecting, but it's indoors. There's a lot of rain around the country. Like 4 or 5 games are going to be impacted by rain, but this will not be one of them. It's indoors.
All right, well, I have the Eagles winning 26-16, so that would cover and come a little bit underneath the over-under there. But it's a clean sweep. We all say Eagles win. Remember, you can place your bets here at Rivers Sportsbook and Casino in Philadelphia or on the Bet Rivers app. Big thanks to Rivers, Sky Motor Cars, the teams at Rebel Hill and Public Square, you watching at home. We'll be back next Monday, right? It's a Monday night game, so we will be on
5
at
o'clock.
5 o'clock to preview Eagles versus
And today,
Minnesota
right?
Vikings.
After
And
the
we
game.
will be on the post-game, the first ever ITB post-game show will be about a half hour after the end of the game.
With?
Adam Caplan, myself, and former Eagle Trey Thomas. And you can
Yeah.
catch all our coverage on InsideTheBirds.com as well. So for Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game.